for a heavenly cause. And I know if I'll only be true to this glory. No, I'm not going to review your fucking app. Glorious quest. This isn't the bibliography for. This is like half the bibliography for this shit, man. My god, what a fucking video. Okay. I have something new to say about Blood Meridian. No one else has said any of this. This is not a summary of a book. We don't do that shit here. Read it yourself. This is a genuine addition, I believe, to the discourse. If you can bring to my attention another instance where someone realized this connection, I will make a sequel to my actual best video ever, How Femboys Won the Vietnam War. The stakes have never been higher. I can't go back into that godforsaken jungle. I'm all out of ammo and poppers. It'd be a bloodbath. Also, I will, credit the person who noticed this first, of course. This is from the account of Cabeza de Vaca.
I tried so hard and got so...
A conquistador, one of the 4 survivors of the Narvaez expedition. His account is our first European description of... quite a bit, actually, but in particular, the place where Blood Meridian is set, part of northern Mexico and the future Apache. As soon as we were settled, we went out to hunt for the fruit of certain trees, which are like spring bitter vetch. Since there are no trails at all in that country, I spent too much time in hunting for them. The people returned without me, and that night, as I started to rejoin them, I went astray and got lost. It pleased God to let me find a burning tree, by the light of which I spent that very cold night. And in the morning, I loaded myself with wood, took 2 burning sticks, and continued my journey. Remind you of anything? He clopped on woodenly, half frozen, his feet senseless. In the distance before him, a fire burned on the prairie, a solitary flame frayed by the wind that freshened and faded and shed scattered sparks down the storm, like hot scurf blown from some unreckonable forge howling in the waste. He sat and watched it. He could not judge how far it was. He lay on his stomach to skylight the train to see what men were there, but there was no sky and no light. He lay for a long time watching, but he saw nothing move. When he went on again, the fire seemed to recede before him. A troop of figures passed between him and the light. Then again, wolves perhaps. He went on. It was a lone tree burning on the desert, a heraldic tree that the passing storm had left afire. The solitary pilgrim drawn up before it had traveled far to be here, and he knelt in the hot sand and held his numbed hands out. Does this mean anything? What about the numerous mentions of conquistadors and knights and the well-known connections between the two? If you don't know those connections, you're going to. I'm going to do something no video essayist should. I'm going to be humble and not act like I know all that there is to fucking know about the world. Don't get used to it, and don't mistake that humility for weakness. I have read fucking quite a few books on the history of the American Southwest, with a particular focus on the Apache Wars. And I'm not done. We are about to have another yeehaw summer. Awesome. It's not hurting my channel or anything, because no one else gives a fuck about the Apache. You should. You should give a fuck about the Apache. I've also read quite a few books on the history of Spanish colonization, with a particular emphasis on conquistador accounts. I love my lunatics in armor running amok. Is Blood Meridian drawing from Cabeza de Vaca's account? The kid and Cabeza de Vaca here, they're both lost in a freezing desert, separated from their respective groups, and are saved by a miraculous burning tree which allows them to survive the night. The kid and Cabeza de Vaca are also both separated from their respective groups emotionally, ideologically, in ways which I'll soon make clear. In brief, there was a flawed place in the fabric of their hearts. And in the end, it didn't add up to anything. I can't see how this could be a coincidence. Cormac McCarthy absolutely read Cabeza de Vaca's account. It's the first written account ever of the place where Blood Meridian is set. Also, I'm pretty sure Cormac McCarthy read every fucking book ever written, which is why this video is so intimidating. It has to be intentional, but what is the intent? The point of the passage is to connect Cabeza de Vaca's experience with war with the kids' experience with war. At first they are enchanted with it. They wish to be knights on a quest. Then they go to war and are quickly disenchanted. They receive this disenchantment as wisdom, which it is. War is bad, who knew? If war is God, as the Judge Holden argues it is, they turn from acolytes to apostates. But in the end, it's all for naught. War will always win, and does, in time, defeat them both. You can wise up. Literally accrue wisdom, see war for what it is rather than the fantasy it was presented to you as. But it won't add up to anything. The kids' arc captures the arc of many conquistadors, frankly, particularly those who traversed the American Southwest. There's a Don Quixote thing going on here. A chivalric fantasy which is ground to dust beneath an uncaring reality. Confidence has been my broader issue this past year or so. Blood Meridian did, at several points, make me feel like this Ogre comic by Kalishnikov on Tumblr.
Everyone call Ogre stupid, and it true. Ogre barely even literate. Ogre finally finished reading Ulysses, but Ogre can only identify surface-level themes like religion and nationalism, and can't comprehend deeper ideas like the remorse of conscience that makes James Joyce's novel a modernist classic. Ogre's so dumb, it make Ogre sad. At this rate, Ogre will never understand Finnegan's way.
Is it right for me to make a video discussing Blood Meridian if I do still struggle to identify some of its deeper themes and more esoteric allusions? If the epilogue still might as well be written in fucking wingdings? I think so. Hasn't stopped anyone else, has it? Humility is the essence of competence. Once again, I have noticed something that no one else has. And what I noticed only reinforces the commonly understood interpretation of the book. Its connections to Moby Dick specifically, and okay, humility over, right? I do understand the epilogue. It's Gnostic, but I need it explained to me. The first line of the fucking book is, "See the child." But you want to look at Judge Holden. What's up with Judge Holden, we ask? All right, fine. That's what you're here for, right? Judge Holden is nothing more than an allegorical representation of Jim Adler, the Texas Hammer. Before man was, car and truck accidents waited for him. The conversation gets so tangled up in the Judge Holden, his compelling yet disturbing rhetoric, or in the epilogue, its Baroque esoteric symbolism, that we neglect the first thing we are asked to do. So let's look. How's that kid doing? At that spring they came upon a young Shoshone boy, not yet attained to years of manhood, and shot him through the back and killed him, taking his scalp from the nape of the neck to the forehead, leaving his entire skull, ghastly and white. It was the boy's first battle. And when the skirmishing began in earnest, he asked permission of his chief to go back to the spring and decorate himself with face paint, which is already plastered over one cheek, and his medicine song was half done when he received the fatal shot. This treatise on war is sponsored by Raycon. Before we continue, I need something to be understood. You are bound by honor, decency, and good taste to always agree with me. That being said, I've noticed that some of you on the public playlist that I share with my buddy, Songs That Bang, you've been downvoting my music. And as though that's not crazy enough, you've been upvoting his. Naturally, this upsets me, you know. Cosmic injustices tend to upset me. But I'm a merciful God, and so I have found the problem. It's not you, your terrible taste, nor your wrong ears. It's your headphones. That has to be the problem. You are morally obligated to click my link in the description and go to buyraycon.com/Peach Cobbler BC to get 15% off these high-quality, bone-conducting headphones. With these incredible headphones, which are half the price of other premium audio brands, by the way, you will learn to appreciate purr. I personally love using Raycons at the gym.
so I can shut out the train playlist they keep playing for some reason.
Yes, this is a sponsored message, alright. But, you know, you never do what you love for free. That's why I'm a hitman. By clicking my link in the description, you'll be supporting the channel, as well as correcting your major malfunction. Now, I understand you have a genuine concern here. Once you have begun crying tears of joy in appreciation of my unimpeachable music taste, you're gonna damage these headphones. You won't. They're IP68 waterproof rated. You can cry in appreciation of Rico Nasty as much as you want. An affordable, high-quality listening experience is waiting for you at buyraycon.com/peachcobblerbc. Click my link in the description to get 15% off.
That's right, just in time for Mother's Day. Give your mother the listening experience she deserves.
It's hard to retain viewers when you're me, which is to say, intense, verbose, and a shitposter. I am a shitposter with a thesaurus in the part of my brain which should, I assume, have been used for doing long division. Shitposters do not like big words. Learned men with a genuine appreciation for diligent historical explorations do not like how I just keep saying that certain nations in the Balkans shouldn't exist. I can be exhausting sometimes, but you can actually stop here. You need not listen to another stupid goddamn word that spills out of my useless YouTuber mouth. We're done. We saw the child, you know, it's that passage that I just shared is just what I'm always saying distilled. You're free. Please buy some Raycons on your way out, but we're done. Don't finish this video, it's a failure, and I already said what I needed to say. We saw the child, our perceiving him changes nothing. My next video is going to be about how the sun should really stop fucking rising. As though it's taking my opinion into account. My approach to history is emotionally taxing, but it has to be. I'm clearly drawn to violence, but not troop movements or tactics. I'm in an odd position, both fascinated by war, yet incapable of respecting it enough to learn about it in any real way beyond seeing the child. The conflict itself, it's silly, you know, it's boys playing dress up. I'm an eagle warrior! Sure, kid. My stance on this is, if writing your history on some conflict or another didn't really emotionally disturb you, you haven't done it right, your history is tonally and frankly, ethically flawed. A history of war should, in 99.99999% of cases, not be rousing. The chief product of war is disillusionment, and so the disillusionment should be prominent, informing every part of the history itself. If this is not the case, if you have engaged in the hero worship of Napoleon or Caesar, or even, you know, a random everyday soldier, you fucked up. You need to go try again. You wrote trash. You have taken your God-given talent, such as it is, and used it to encourage the perpetuation of war. You've made something immoral. Also, you know, on a personal level, it's very pathetic to sit in a big, comfy chair, reading and writing about how war's the best. It turns boys, not only into men, but heroes. Cool. Go enlist? Why are you reading and writing about it? You can do it now, up to the age of 42. Go be a soldier. You shouldn't be a historian. You know, I'm now an undergraduate history student, but I'm, you know, at the end of the day, I am just a guy who reads a lot of fucking books. And frankly, so much of history YouTube is trash. I try not to feel too bad about my lack of, like, a philosophy of history. I'm on a journey. I'm learning still. I am a literal student, albeit an old one. My stance is that as long as I get the basic facts of what transpired correct, there is value in what I made. It felt that way, and now I'm not so sure. I've begun to feel like I'm just climbing a mountain over and over, and I get to the top, and who's up there? It's God. And what do we talk about? We don't. I try to beat the shit out of him. There's no philosophy or reason to it. I'm mad. I'm unhappy with the situation. And what happens when I try to fistfight God? I lose. Probably should have expected that. He is all-knowing. And I can confirm he does know Taekwondo. He wipes the floor with my bookish ass. Most video essays, which aren't hacky recountings of plots or ChatGPT slop, are useless. How many video essays, including many of my own, can be summarized with being greedy is bad. And it ruined a video game I could have liked. My tone is mocking, but genuinely, there's nothing wrong with this, you know? Being greedy is bad, it ruins everything. And I don't think a video about Anthem should devolve into a Marxist exploration of how the superstructure of our society dictated that the video game should suck balls. That sounds like a nightmare. I don't want to watch that, much less fucking make it. But there is a use to it, right? It feels good to commiserate over these things. It's a true statement that greed ruined this or that video game, and there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that. We have become a little too obsessed with novel takes. The sun keeps rising over the same situation, and most video essays boil down to how unsatisfactory that situation is. Dare I say, most art is about how unacceptable our situation is. See ya. See ya, see ya, see ya. Meow. Come here. Come here, you're a prop. Come be a prop. Come here. Under the chalkboard. Good girl. Yes, yes. I could easily construct a syllogism, arguing for why my cat should never die. Death is bad. My cat is good. Therefore, my cat should never die. Only bad cats should. Like yours. Sorry to break the news to you. She's going to. And that does upset me, like all the time. Shut the fuck up. Things should be different, but they're not. The world would be better if our cats didn't die. But they're going to. And that's just the way it is. You can't argue your way out of that. It be what it be. And there was not enough headroom. People are greedy. Cats die, despite how good they are. Oh, yes, they are. Boys are shot and scalped as they play dress up as warriors. Life is a prolonged disappointment. Disenchantment, even. You certainly have, at some point, gone through life with the vision of the future in your head. And that future almost certainly never came to pass. In the one I imagined, I didn't have to snort finasteride to maintain my chopped-ass hairline at the age of 28. But my body is rotting. It's a situation. This is just what happens here. Did it ever occur to you maybe that there's something wrong with here? Certainly there's something wrong with us. An incongruency between us and the place which made us. Why do we struggle to accept here? We are from here. Shut the fuck up. I'm sorry, see ya. When I start yelling or talking, she gets so jealous. She's jealous of the fucking camera. Come on. This past year or so has been a strange one for me, as I've really thrown myself into the history of the Apache Wars. I've been losing fights with God at a rate you couldn't even fucking imagine. In much the same way that no C-suite executive at EA is gonna watch your video on Anthem, so too has the universe not noticed how little I care for it. I've always operated under this bizarre and very human delusion that if I understand something, then I can stop it. But I know why the sun rises, and I can't stop that. I hate that my favorite author is Kurt Vonnegut. I'm not happy about the fact that I quote him constantly. I read other writers, okay? I promise. He's a college student's favorite writer. And I am one, but not age-wise, maturity-wise. He shouldn't be my favorite writer. He's a writer you're supposed to outgrow by the time you're my age, when you accept it, I guess, but I can't accept it because I don't want to be a historian that writes about war wrong. A part of the problem, a merchant of fantasy to stupid fucking boys. Also on a more narcissistic note, he's not niche enough to be esoteric and cool, not mainstream enough for people to know who the fuck he is when I bring him up in real-life conversation. I tell people that my favorite book has a crude drawing of a butthole on page 5. And they act all weird all of a sudden. Do you know what happened when I was in high school and I went up to the librarian and I asked if she had the book, which has defined my worldview, my life, like my work now. She had never heard of it. A librarian. A librarian should know who Kurt fucking Vonnegut is. Holy shit. The girls on Hinge, okay, fine. But a librarian, man? It was actually a little funny. She said, Slaughterhouse-5. I haven't even heard of the first 4. She was dead serious. Slaughterhouse-5 is a book about how war is bad, and you shouldn't do them. It's a book which opens with the admission that it is a failure. Anti-war books don't stop wars. In the introduction, the very act of writing an anti-war book is likened to writing an anti-glacier book. The glaciers don't care. Although we are actually, depressingly enough, getting way closer to stopping the glacier scourge. Not any closer to fixing that war problem, though. Slaughterhouse-5 argues that part of the reason war will never end is because children fight them. But then they come back home and they deny that they were children. They cannot come by the reality that they were foolish children trapped in a nightmare, honestly. Maybe it's not that I can't accept reality, it's that you fucking can't. War is too bleak to come by honestly, but by failing to come by it honestly, we encourage it. War is inevitable, and I know that. But why do we have to sell this fantasy of it? Do we need to encourage it? I think there's value in informed consent. You know, that passage I read, that Shoshone boy, I didn't even need to read that shit. Go to a basic training graduation, any branch, and observe how they all look like they just crawled out of a fucking daycare. Then look at a Call of Duty protagonist, and they all universally have scars and facial hair and fucking bricks for faces. Despite how much I love Slaughterhouse-5, I mean, this is clearly a very well-loved book. Its perspective on history and conflict and PTSD, it is flawed in one way. Kurt Vonnegut made the classic mistake of listening to a woman. Vonnegut was working on his book about his time in World War II, so he went to visit his old war buddy, Bernard V. O'Hare, to help him pin down the details of what they both went through. 2 old, grizzled war veterans were going to sit by the fire, sip brandy, smoke cigars, and reminisce. Mary, Bernard's wife, a mother and nurse, is clearly unhappy with the circumstances. She is a woman, so she moves furniture loudly, she cleans this and that in a huff, just real passive-aggressive. And eventually, she turned to me. Let me see how angry she was and that the anger was for me. She'd been talking to herself, so what she said was a fragment of a much larger conversation. "You were just babies then," she said. "What?" "You were just babies in the war, like the ones upstairs." I nodded. This was true. We had been foolish virgins in the war, right at the end of childhood. But you're not going to write it that way, are you? This wasn't a question, it was an accusation. I don't know. Well, I know. You'll pretend you were men instead of babies, and you'll be played in the movies by Frank Sinatra and John Wayne, or some of those other glamorous, war-loving, dirty old men, and war will look just wonderful. So we'll have a lot more of them. And they'll be fought by babies like the babies upstairs. So I held up my right hand and I made her a promise. "Mary, I don't think this book of mine is ever going to be finished. I must have written 5,000 pages by now, and thrown them all away. If I ever do finish it though, I give you my word of honor. There won't be a part for Frank Sinatra or John Wayne. I tell you what, I'll call it the Children's Crusade." She was my friend after that. Mary was wrong, as was Vonnegut, albeit in a very small way. The John Wayne-ification of soldiers, the way we present them as square-jawed, tough, grizzled old men while sending naive, ignorant boys into a meat grinder. The fundamental disconnect between war as it is and war as we communicate it to children, that's ancient. That precedes movies. It probably precedes books, but there's just no way to tell. That lie transcends culture, time, and space. That passage of the Shoshone boy, that's from page 314 of On the Border with Crook, a memoir written by an American officer in the Apache Wars, John Bork. Interesting source. A man of his time and place, but, he had an intrepid spirit. Some amount of empathy, certainly, for the plight of the Indians. Most importantly, for our discussion today, he had 2 pieces of decor in his quarters at Old Camp Grant, which haunt me. The first, an Apache scalp, The ears were still attached. He kept it beneath the base of his lamp. And that second piece of decor, a suit of armor which had belonged to some Spanish foot soldier of the 16th century. On that suit of armor, I should like to say a word. It was found by Surgeon Steyer of the army, enclosing the bones of a man in the arid country between the waters of the Rio Grande and the Pecos. What Bork only scratched the surface of, what Blood Meridian explores in great depth, is that the Wild West, in all its unrelenting horror, was a product of knights on a quest. Blood Meridian is, as I hinted in a community post, which some of you wrote very mean comments on, this is a fairy tale. It's fantasy. To use less modern but more accurate terminology, it's a tale of chivalry, a chivalric romance, a story of knights on a quest through a dangerous and unknown other world. Blood Meridian's odd chivalric allusions have been picked up on, but are rarely discussed. In order that I may earn the benefit of the doubt so that we may proceed, here's a few brief passages which highlight this. Also read American Fairy, Medieval Fairy Lore in Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian by Luke William Mills, which posited that the Judge Holden is a fairy. It's frankly pretty compelling. Doesn't the very word other world sorta capture a bit of the setting here? There is a medieval village in the middle of this book. What the fuck is that about? You are Sociedad de Guerra contra los Barbaros. Toadvine didn't know. He looked like some loutish knight beriddled by a troll. He, the kid, keeps off the King's Road for fear of citizenry. The judge had spied the musician, and he called to him and tossed a coin that clicked upon the stones. The fiddler held it briefly to the light as if it might not serve, and then slipped it away among his clothes, and fitted his instrument beneath his chin, and struck up an air that was old among the mountebanks of Spain 200 years before. The judge stepped into the sunlit doorway and executed upon the stones a series of steps with a strange precision, and he and the fiddler seemed alien minstrels met by chance in this medieval town. Oh, I'm actually sweating. Sick. I think these allusions might be ignored for Moby Dick reasons, which we will get into later. Both books are stories of knights on a quest. In Moby Dick's case, this is more overt, with 2 chapters being literally named Knights and Squires. 2 chapters. What is this all in reference to? Well, I'm arguing today that these are in reference to chivalric romances. During the Middle Ages, these were generally recorded in the form of poetry and were, like all writing at the time, appreciated only by the clergy and nobility, who were fucking nerds, unlike the illiterate Chad peasants. In much the same way that a Call of Duty informs a child's understanding of war today, or I don't know, 10 years ago. Do kids even still fucking play Call of Duty? So too, did chivalric romances serve as models for knightly conduct. Take pride in your role as the middle manager of feudalism, you brave knight. These stories guided their conduct and self-image. Be strong. Be a good Christian. Protect the innocent. Save damsels. Fight monsters. Kill Muslims. What a wonderful man to be. We grade humans on a curve. Everyone just fucking talked like this back then. It's literally the medieval era, okay? There are worse things to aspire to be. At least there's stuff about being nice to girls. Blood Meridian's penchant for knights and odd medieval allusions has been picked up on by Sean of Travel Through Stories in his video Medievalism in Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian. This was, embarrassingly, but thank you, brought to my attention by a Twitch viewer. I have no ethos. I have no credibility. It's painfully obvious that I had a Slim Jim for breakfast. In fact, I go out of my way to make sure you don't trust me. It makes me laugh for some reason. Also, I want you to check out my sources. Critically engage with my argument, you fucking cowards. Sean is a medievalist. His knowledge is on full display, and he has about 6 fucking copies of Beowulf for some reason. Sean did not eat a Slim Jim for breakfast. He's measured, eloquent, well-read, my God. I bet he even washes his bed sheets. Not me. I like having some stank on him. But Sean also missed the forest for the trees. Sean, you beautiful man. Is that sweater cashmere? Oh, it's so soft. Sean, you were on the cusp of a powerful revelation, which I have stolen to sell Raycons. I encourage you to check out his video and tell him that I'm just like this. Like, this is how I express respect for some reason. Genuinely, it's a good video. There is profound significance to employing chivalric language and tropes in this context. The chivalric romance, which had once taken the form of poetry consumed and written exclusively by clergy and nobility in the Middle Ages, was democratized with the invention of the printing press. Now everyone could read about cool knights and their adventures as literacy became more commonplace and books ceased to be a luxury of the wealthy elite. Before long, an entirely new, generally considered trashier, sort of prose chivalry became the literary craze. The first literary craze. These stories of knights and their adventures shaped the world as we see it today. These were the founding myths of the modern era, the emotional fuel of the age of exploration, the bedrock which 500 years of European imperialism was built on. In general, we underestimate the strength of traditional elements in Western culture while celebrating them elsewhere. Part of the myth of modern Western civilization is, after all, that it has discarded myth. Sometimes I'll read this academic dry shit, but like I'll hear the battle rap soundbite. Before romantasy and book talk, there was Amadis of Gaul. This was like the Conquistadors' favorite fucking guy. This coincided with the discovery of the New World, this popular craze of chivalric tales of knights going on grand adventures and slaying monsters and saving damsels and, usually, being amply rewarded for their sacred quest in service to God and glory. I mean, it can't be a virtuous quest if it doesn't make me fucking rich, right? I mean, it sounds silly, doesn't it? But you've become wealthier than Mansa Musa and fucking self by the end of most fantasy video games, haven't you? It's important to note that these men also saw no hypocrisy in claiming all these riches they came across. Like, their argument went, I served God, and I got a bunch of gold, because, like, me and him, we're like this now. I'm like his favorite fucking guy. It remains a common trope in fantasy today. The treasures, the exploration of distant and hostile lands. Does this remind you of anyone in particular? Amadis of Gaul, the most successful printed book of the early 16th century in Spain, though written far earlier, accompanied conquistadors as much as did prayer books and books of hours. Sometimes these novels too would form the themes of ballads. These writings are now remembered because Cervantes and Don Quixote made fun of them. At the time, they satisfied a deep need. This has been the subject of quite a bit. I need to just have all the books here. This has been the subject of quite a bit of scholarship. The conquistadors' love for tales of chivalry. Really, the love for tales of chivalry, it extended through much of the age of exploration. It was not exclusive to the conquistadors. Lots of famous explorers loved these books. Except for Captain Cook. That man never had an emotion in his life. He didn't even fuck his wife. It was beneath him. He mailed her his fluids and told her to do it for the king. For obvious reasons, I'm going to restrict this discussion largely to conquistadors. Sir Walter Raleigh didn't have dick to do with the American Southwest. But you should also know, this was not exclusive to the conquistadors. They were all, genuinely, this delusional and stupid. The conquistador love for chivalric fiction has been the subject of a lot of study, despite the fact, it's not fashionable to discuss what the conquistadors dreamt of. That's not very materialist of you, young man. You stop too soon. You can't stop at what they fucking dreamt of. It's sort of an unserious thing to talk about. Gets you laughed out of all the cool historian parties, where we rail lines of crushed up reference books and talk about how archaeologists get no pussy. Do not believe the propaganda. The most famous book on this subject is Books of the Brave by Irving A. Leonard, which explored the broad reading habits of conquistadors, but will certainly, if you read it yourself, you will come away with one conclusion. These men were fucking insane. Which is generally the thesis of all my conquistador videos.
Prepare yourself for a monstrous quote. I'm sorry, Don't move.
The turn of the 15th century heralded the true beginning of the democratization of reading with the rise of the so-called romances of chivalry, which were the first popular literature to demonstrate the commercial possibilities of the recently invented printing press. Taking its strongest hold in Spain soon after the discovery of America, this literary fashion spread like a contagion into the neighboring countries of Europe and, presently, across the ocean to the New World. Everywhere, the appeal of this fiction proved overpowering, and the literate elements of all social classes succumbed to it. And long before this enthusiasm subsided completely, these fantastic tales had left their impression on contemporary customs and manners, had fired the imaginations of adventurers in Europe and America, and had inspired the greatest masterpiece in Spanish literature. These novels were usually long accounts of the impossible exploits of knightly heroes in strange and enchanted lands inhabited by monsters and extraordinary creatures, and they presented a highly imaginative, idealized concept of life in which strength, virtue, and passion were all of a transcendent and unnatural character. These prolix narratives were, indeed, the melodrama of their age, and readers, unrestrained by any knowledge of what are today the most elementary scientific facts, accepted avidly and uncritically the wildest extravagances that the authors generously offered them. Like the motion pictures of a later day, these romantic novels exerted a profound influence on contemporary conduct, morality, and thought patterns, and they furthered the acceptance of artificial standards of value and false attitudes toward reality. The popularity of these romances in the 16th century was, in reality, a more democratic revival in the Spanish peninsula of a medieval passion for the literature of chivalry. I'm sorry, that's a long quote. Slim Jim. The point is the conquistadors had dreams. They wanted to make the world a better place, and many of them genuinely thought that they were. They were attempting to embody a story, which, taken on its own, is a pretty virtuous thing. But really, it's just an appealing thing. Thank you, HBO, for repopularizing the knight errant. You clearly did this for me. I appreciate the assist. Sir Duncan the Tall does embody that sort of chivalric ideal, the knight errant, being strong, brave, sleeping in the fucking woods, protecting the innocent. What I'm about to say is an important dimension to dubious historical sources that I worry I'm not always properly communicating. This is a vibe thing, which is to say it would get me get laughed at by a real historian. But I would say about 80% of the time, when a historical source is lying to me, they're really just lying to themselves. Conquistador conduct in the New World was not made of gumdrops and rainbows. They were not chivalrous knights, beholden only to their virtue. No, they were, by and large, vile warlords and slavers. You look at this man and tell me he looks like a virtuous knight. No, Pedro de Alvarado was not a brave knight on a quest. He dreamed of no virtuous deeds. No, he was the flesh lord of the Guatemalan wastes. One of this blackguard's ploys, whenever he was about to attack a city or the surrounding countryside, was to take with him as many natives as he could from the tribes he had already conquered, and to get them to do his fighting for him. Since he never fed the 10 or 20,000 impressed natives in his army, he gave them leave to eat the prisoners they took, thus setting the royal seal of approval on the establishment, in his camp, of a human abattoir, where he himself would preside over the slaughter and grilling of children. But not every conquistador was Pedro de Alvarado. I mean, look at his fucking face. Bear in mind that Las Casas, the man who I just cited, was aggressively anti-conquistador. He had political motives. The cannibal king of Guatemala, I don't know. It's a lot. But nonetheless, how do you go from I want to be a cool knight doing virtuous deeds on an adventure through a mysterious land to the Cholula massacre, or the slaving of millions of Native Americans, or the sheer horror of the black mines of Potosi, where generations labored and died in the dark, scratching silver from dirt. The Conquistador account is not popular reading now, and I obviously regard this as fucking insane. These are the foundations of the world you live in, if you're on this half of the planet. The cool half of the planet? Pan-American exceptionalism. I forgot the M. I'm gonna schizo post that into being one day, and I will exclude Brazilians, cause I don't know nothing about Brazilians. Other than they're way better than me at riding motorcycles, and we hold a differing philosophy on the matter of pubic hair. Frankly, I resent the fact that I need to explain just how deep this connection goes. Like, I get that you're not gonna do like a big exploration of specifically the Narvaez expedition in school, right? Like, that's not the point of history classes in school. But you should have been taught this shit. But no, you learned about the first Thanksgiving 12 fucking times. And if you were lucky, only the last time was accurate. What is the fucking point of that shit? Of course you think this hemisphere is boring. You were told all the most boring parts. You can't cut out the blood. That's sacred. That's why we care about this stuff. I keep spitting and I'm sorry. I'm a little intense in this one, guys. I can't begin to tell you how obvious chivalric influence was on these guys. Their actions and how they described the places they found. It is, at times, fucking Looney Tunes. The second language is that of the Picashes. These are the people who inhabit the lands between the plains and the mountains. They are more savage people. Some eat human flesh, particularly those who dwell at the foot of the mountains. They are inveterate sodomites. They take many wives, even though these are sisters. They worship carved stones and are great wizards and sorcerers. Cannibal wizards who loved anal. The ethnographic data indicates that they were cannibal wizards who loved anal. I love anthropology. To be clear, you shouldn't trust that shit I just said. The political motivations for that source, holy shit, way worse than Las Casas' motivations. Many Native Americans were recorded in conquistador accounts as being cannibals, because under Spanish law, you could not enslave the Indians. Unless I saw them eat a guy, and then after they ate a guy, they started doing all this black magic butt stuff. Half of what makes these conquistador accounts so genuinely entertaining is that most of them are these fellas just screaming.
Satanic black magic. Sick shit. I'm asking you to leave.
Yes, some did eat guys. I've talked about that. I'm not a proponent of the native utopia. Shut the fuck up. The broad narrative arc of chivalric romances and the accounts of conquistadors are almost identical. They share a great many tropes. My favorite is that of the sinister fortune teller who delivers a prophecy. Like Botello, the astrologer. Do you not know Botello, the astrologer? How unfortunate. He was involved in the fall of the Aztec, and our only account of him beyond, I don't know, probably like a shit manifest rotting in some archive somewhere. Like, if you want to learn about this as a layman, you're really only going to come across him in Bernal Diez's The True History of the Conquest of New Spain, which is by far the most chivalric coded conquistador account. I will now speak of Botello the astrologer. His astrology did not help him, for he too died there with his horse. But let me go on to say that after we got to safety, some papers... Shut up, come on. But let me go on to say that after we got to safety, some papers, bound together like a book, were found in his box, marked with figures, lines, notes, and symbols, and beside them were the words, "Whether I shall die in this wretched war, murdered by the Indians." And further on there were other lines and figures, beside which it said, "You will die," and besides others it said, "You will not die." There were other figures in these papers, apparently for fortune-telling, and other pairs of contradictory statements. Also in the box was an object 4 inches long and made of leather, in the shape of a man's genitals. The resemblance was remarkable. Like I said, I think about this fucker constantly. Botello and his prophecies and his box of dongs. How sinister is that shit? The expedition of Panfio de Narvaez was the expedition which Cabeza de Vaca chronicled. It also included a sinister fortune, in this case delivered by a woman who accurately predicted everything the expedition would experience. When Narvaez marched inland, one of the conquistador's wives warned him not to go, as neither he nor any of his company would return, and that should any come back, God would work miracles through him, as she felt sure that few or none would escape. The governor responded that he and all who went with him expected to fight and conquer many and very strange people and countries, so that, while many would have to die in the conquest, he was sure from the accounts he had of the richness of the country that the survivors would be fortunate and become very wealthy. He entreated the woman to tell him who it was that had acquainted her with the things past and present of which she had spoken, she answered that in Castile, a Moorish woman from Hornachos had told her what she said to us before we left there, all of which took place as predicted. The most popular tale of chivalry is name-dropped, famously by Bernal Diaz del Castillo, the man who got me on all this shit years back. Here, he recounts the first time that they saw the Valley of Mexico, and he communicates it as literally looking like an enchanted vision from Amadis. I'm not going to stop and read the whole quote. This shit is just Google it. Like, this shit is super established fact. The explicit allusions to chivalric romances in conquistador accounts were a little sparse, but the fact that they were mentioned at all is shocking, considering two facts as explained by Irving A. Leonard. 1. If you were trying to convince people that all this shit you saw was real, you probably should not cite fiction. 2. The classic chivalric fiction, mostly the stuff from the Middle Ages and the very early Renaissance, that was usually considered to have literary merit. But as the 16th century progressed, a lot of trash came out. It was sort of the equivalent of like book talk, or really like a romantasy, I think is what they call it, werewolf porn at worst. Like, it was not respectable reading. I think it can best be captured by this one point which is brought up at length in Books of the Brave. The conquistadors were obsessed with the Amazons. The female warriors of Greek myth were repopularized by these chivalric romances. Obviously, the Amazonian basin was named after the Amazons, but California was as well. Califia was the queen of the Amazons in the chivalric romance Serras de Esplanian. I need to be clear. California is called California because the conquistadors thought it was an island filled with female warriors wielding golden weapons, like in their fairy tales. I have one more thing. I can't help it. The contract that Diego Velázquez and Hernán Cortés signed, which authorized Cortés's expedition, explicitly stated, because it is said that there are people with large broad ears and others with faces like dogs, to find out about them, and also where and in what direction are the Amazons, who are nearby according to the Indians whom you are taking with you. This is a legal fucking document. Imagine buying a car and the dealer forces you to sign a paper saying that if you find fairies in the radiator, Fred Haas of Toyota fame gets a piece of that pussy. This is the great founding myth of the modern era, and yet we speak of the logical and reasonable Europeans fighting those superstitious savages. Brace yourself for aggressive centrism. All men are superstitious savages. What planet are you from? You can't do hero worship in history because all of history is written by, directed by, fucking idiots. The conquistadors were dead serious about these myths and legends. These expeditions were often explicitly motivated by belief in these legends. It was faith and myth which motivated their cruelty. It was their attempt to realize the fantasy which caused the atrocities. There is an unmistakable connection between chivalry and the least chivalrous shit you could imagine. Even Las Casas, president and founder of the Fuck Conquistadors Club, knew all about these guys' fascination with their stupid fucking books about knights. Father Las Casas sought to enlist the settlers for an idealistic community on the northern coast of South America. By dubbing Knights of the Golden Spur, he did so with the sure knowledge of the strong appeal such a designation offered to a generation under the sway of chivalric fiction. Prester John, El Dorado, the 7 golden cities of Cibola. The conquistadors explicitly were seeking these things. The reason I'm really driving this point home is that they staked their fucking lives on this shit. Their reputations, everything, upon myths and legends being real and within their reach. It was tale of these rich cities of Cibola, specifically, which motivated the expedition of Coronado. This was the first expedition into the North American interior. And what happened to our brave knights when they went on this bold quest? In brief, they created a machine, and a machine to make the machine, and evil that can run itself 1,000 years, no need to tend it. You believe that? I don't know. Believe that. The Spanish crown would grant licenses to conquistadors, giving them the title of adelantado, a carryover from the Reconquista. It essentially means like forward man, advance guy, you know what I'm saying? The Spanish called everything north of their frontier Florida. Obviously, in no universe was one horny Hidalgo gonna control all this, but we are talking about still very poorly understood terrain. They probably had no idea just how much they were given to this one guy. Yeah, no, the entire modern continental United States back then was taken up by Florida. It was truly a barbaric time. Our ancestors have succeeded in containing Florida, and one day our descendants may finally eliminate it. You see, people act like global warming is all bad. If you were looking for an example of chivalric fantasy unfulfilled, of disenchantment, you really cannot find a better example than the expedition of Panfilo de Narvaez. The treasurer and eventual chronicler of this horribly failed expedition was Cabeza de Vaca. He and 3 other men survived this military entrada of 400. That is a 1% survival rate. Obviously, we're going to discuss Cabeza de Vaca's expedition, but we have a lot of ground to cover, and I have discussed this before. So we are going to keep it pretty brief. They were blown off course by a series of storms, but because they didn't really understand the area, they had no idea how off course they were. They disembarked at modern Tampa Bay, Florida, believing they were in northern Mexico and that rich cities were nearby. They started waving their swords around, you know, as they do. They got the absolute shit kicked out of them by the natives, and they could not re-establish contact with the boats that they had agreed to meet later, because once again, they didn't know where they were. They cut their losses, realizing that there were no wealthy cities to loot, but rather only powerful native warriors that were gonna beat the shit out of them. They butchered their horses, ate them, melted down their weapons and armor, and tried to float down the northern Gulf Coast, back to Spanish civilization, on crude rafts. Cabeza de Vaca's raft landed on or right next to modern Galveston, where finally the arrows stopped flying at them constantly, because now they weren't stomping around and waving their swords all over the place. You know, they didn't have any left. They were naked, starving, dying of exposure. They were here rescued by the very people that they had come to kill, enslave, and rob. Specifically, the Karankawa, the natives of the Texas Gulf Coast. Cabeza de Vaca would describe him and his peers as being enslaved by the Karankawa. No, you weren't enslaved, because like they saved your fucking life. It still pisses me off. Andres Resendez, he gets into this, but it's still, out of all the things conquistadors have said, like, what a shitty thing to say about the people that saved your fucking life. They made us do the woman work. Yeah, you're fucking useless. The Karankawa, if you live in Texas, you know what the water here is like. You can't see shit, and they would just walk into it with a bow and arrow, dinner. You can't do that. You're fucking useless. Carry the firewood! Cabeza de Vaca and 3 of his peers resumed their attempt to recontact Spanish civilization after some time. One of these men was a black man named Estebanico, who was a DEI hire, I presume. How else did he end up there? It must have been a woke. On this journey, they performed healing miracles in the desert, which earned them, at one time, thousands of Native American followers. They became Spanish Moses. Moses. It's not a Greek word, that doesn't work. I'm gonna pick you up now and I'm gonna hold you until you shut up. I'm trying to make Moses plural. Moseses, I guess. Mises. They led, as I said, thousands of Indian followers, according to Cabeza. That's certainly an exaggeration, but there's also some slavery stuff going on, which we will get into. The burning tree, and I know I'm going to get a lot of comments by people that did not finish this video and didn't really think about it. The burning tree makes sense as an allusion to that moment in Exodus where God appears to Moses as a burning bush. In Cabeza de Vaca's case, that makes no sense with the kid in Blood Meridian. They bear zero resemblance. I think Cabeza de Vaca actually experienced this, because it's, I don't know, it's just, who can say? Like, I just think it's really fucking cool. But regardless, he's got a real Moses thing going on. He either really experienced this and thought, oh fuck, I'm like that guy. What was in the basket and all that? Or he made it up to force this comparison for political reasons. I read Exodus looking specifically for like comparisons with Blood Meridian. Like, no. The kid isn't Moses. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Cabeza de Vaca was attempting to convince King Charles V of some shit. We'll get into it later. But this, where the fuck is Blood Meridian? Every time I gotta go looking for a book. Okay, now, I've been dunking on some fucking Iberians, and I think I've earned the benefit of the doubt. There was genuine nightmare shit happening in this hemisphere, because we are nightmares. I have heavily criticized the still too widespread native utopia, my handwriting is awful, myth. This is horse shit. It's a nice way to be wrong, I guess. Like, at least you're not wrong and an asshole, you're just wrong. And like, your heart is in the right place. Actually, no, it's not. It's in the wrong place. You're wrong. Your beliefs do not hold up under any level of scrutiny whatsoever. Speaking of fantasy destroying people's sound judgment, people talk about Native Americans like they're the elves in The Lord of the Rings. What are you doing? I also love the difference between like white people's approach to having Native American ancestry and Latino approach to having Native American ancestry. The Guatemalan day laborers at your Home Depot parking lot are way more Mayan than you are fucking Cherokee. They literally might speak a Mayan language. Millions of people still speak a Mayan language. And yet you talk about the Mayans like, ooh, they're so mysterious. Where did they go? They grouted your bathroom. Jorge has a connection with nature, which we just can't understand. An ancestral knowledge of the trees and the language they speak. Jorge communes with them by drinking of the sacred waters of Modelo. And he says, ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué? Mis hijos siempre están mirando el anime. ¿Por qué? Dije a mis hijos, vas afuera, hablarte con las chicas. Pero no van. Mis hijos fueron afuera una vez este año pasado. Isn't that lament beautiful? I wonder what it means. Native Americans are guys. Cabeza de Vaca comes across some terrible shit. Wife-beating, constant warfare, inscrutable, and really sinister violence. Also, they're doing gay shit, fellas. I mean, I don't mind them doing gay shit, like whatever, but this would be completely unacceptable to any European at the time. During the time I was among them, I saw something very repulsive, which was one man married to another. These are weak and womanish beings who dress like women and perform the duties of women. They carry heavy loads but do not use a bow. Among these Indians, we saw many of them. Oh, that's not just gay, that's fucking trans. I liked the Indians when they were killing each other. That was pretty cool. But then they got woke. But really, Cabeza de Vaca records actually heinous shit. It is a custom of theirs to kill even their own children for the sake of dreams, and newborn girls are thrown away to be eaten by dogs. The reason they do it, they say, is that all the others of that country are their enemies with whom they are always at war, and should they marry their daughters, they might multiply so much as to be able to overcome them and reduce them to slavery. What the conquistadors heavily argued was that they had a moral imperative to conquer, to throw off the yoke of Montezuma, Christianize savages, or bring order to lawless wastelands. Could such a thing be done through a peaceful, Cabeza de Vaca-esque mission? My fly was undone this entire time. Could such a thing be done through a peaceful, Cabeza de Vaca-esque mission? Or was it only through brutal conquest that such positive changes could be put in place? They be doing gay shit, fellas. What are we gonna do about this? But in this case, it was only once the expedition was shattered, naked, on the same technological level as the Indians, forced to ask instead of coerce, that they actually did spread Christianity. Furthermore, do you know what other conquistadors have been doing in this area at this time? What changes they had been effecting? Cabeza de Vaca didn't just lead hundreds of Indians, he led them into the chains of slavers. We traveled over a great part of the country and found it all deserted, since the people had fled to the mountains, leaving their houses and fields out of fear of the Christians. This filled our hearts with sorrow, seeing the land so fertile and beautiful, so full of water and streams but abandoned, and the places burned down and the people so thin and wan, fleeing and hiding. Since they did not raise any crops, their destitution had become so great that they ate tree bark and roots. Among conquistadors, none, except for actually possibly Pedro de Alvarado, have a worse reputation than Nuno de Guzman, oftentimes referred to as Bloody Guzman. He had been getting fat and happy off the profits of slaving Indians from horseback at this time, and Cabeza de Vaca recorded the sheer destruction these men had wrought. He presents a clear argument in his account. I probably don't even need to say it, but hey Charles, that's a nice chin you got there. All these other guys out here, they're raging assholes. They are not furthering the spread of Christendom. Not like me. They're harvesting innocent lives for profit, giving our main man, JC, a bad name. I've been a very good Jesus boy, dare I say. I was chosen for this. Put me in, coach. I'll be your good boy. Cabeza de Vaca desired to be granted permission to conquer the very region Narvaez had failed to. This was also lobbied for by Bartolomé de las Casas, who had been advocating for an end to these brutal conquests. Cabeza de Vaca really fit his narrative. Like, this is how it should be done. Cabeza de Vaca would not be given that opportunity. Instead, he'd be given a chance to test out his unconventional methods at the mouth of the Rio de la Plata in modern Buenos Aires. This was already a Spanish colony at the time, and it was in dire straits. Illness and conflict with the local Indians had created a bad situation, to put it mildly. Cabeza de Vaca attempted to keep the peace. He gave out gifts, he kept a tight leash on the conquistadors, and he worked to persuade the Indians rather than just dominate them. Whichever group I call out first, it does reflect on me, doesn't it? They were all savages. None of this shit worked. The conquistadors came to kill and steal shit. I mean, if that's not savage, I don't know what is. The Indians, they did not like these weirdos telling them that they weren't allowed to eat people anymore and had to stop fighting their neighbors who they'd been fighting forever. Like, these are probably ancient blood feuds, and just some random guys roll up and tell you you're not allowed to do it anymore. No one person was at fault, but there was this one real asshole. The Paraguays could see that the Spaniards were wasting away and lacked arms, so they began to treat them familiarly. As your friends, we would like to invite you to our houses to share our hospitality, they said. They then led them off into some canebrakes, where 2 Indians grabbed each Christian, while a number of their friends ran up with clubs and began beating the Spaniards' brains out. Domingo de Irala did this dirty business with malice aforethought. He wanted the Indians to kill those men, and they certainly did so when they rose up in that country. Yeah. Cabeza de Vaca's disenchantment with war, his religious and, dare I say, moral awakening, it added up to fucking nothing. His governorship was a disaster. Business as usual resumed shortly. His methods of conquest were decidedly unconventional. Instead of riding on horseback, Cabeza de Vaca went barefoot ahead of his men, calling out to the Indians of the region, the Guarani, and trying to lure them gently. He gave out gifts to the Guarani and ordered his men to pay scrupulously for all the goods received from them. To prevent any abuses, Cabeza de Vaca always set up his camp away from native villages and allowed his men to trade with the Indians only through a licensed agent. Cabeza de Vaca's men did not approve these methods. The European residents of the Rio de la Plata had their own ideas about how to treat Indians and profit at their expense. Having lived in the area before Cabeza de Vaca's arrival, most of them came to resent this curious leader, who behaved more like a missionary than a conquistador. There were rumblings of rebellion. Perhaps more jarringly for Cabeza de Vaca, the Guarani Indians also became disaffected. They balked at his Christianizing program, which included such strictures as the eradication of cannibalism and the imposition of monogamous marriage. By the spring of 1544, Cabeza de Vaca's men had had enough. They seized the governor and sent him back to Spain, accused of charges ranging from confiscating the property of dead European residents, to not bringing sufficient supplies to Paraguay, to forbidding the Europeans to trade freely with the Indians and thus reducing them to poverty, to delivering 25 friendly Indians to the Guaranis to be killed and eaten. Cabeza de Vaca's forced return to Spain was a time of reckoning for him. His colonization project in South America had been a utopian dream. Gentle and well-intentioned as he may have been, a conquest was still a conquest after all. He would be imprisoned for years for this shit. What about the removal of Bloody Guzman, though? You know, Cabeza de Vaca, his account, like, it helped trigger that really positive change. Well, we'll get to that. I've talked about Cabeza de Vaca before, how he became Bartolomé de las Casas' favorite boy, how they both attempted to institute a kind conquest I've gotten comments lamenting the tragedy that such a thing was never attempted. And at the time, I was sort of in the same boat, like thinking, man, history could have turned out differently. It could have turned out decently. No, it couldn't have. That's not how history works. Everything happens the only way it can. That's why it happened. Otherwise, that other stuff would have happened. But it didn't happen because it couldn't. I learned that on Tralfamador, you fucking idiot. To put that in a comprehensible way, in history there are no control groups. There's no one to tell us what might have been. We weep over the might have been, but there is no might have been. There never was. Oh, if only the Spanish had stopped being so mean. They tried. An effort was made. A score for historical materialism. Spanish colonization was a reflection of their economic reality. No more, no less. There was a situation which could be exploited. It was going to be exploited. That's just how history rolls, man. Spanish colonization happened the only way it possibly could have. Conquistadors were not unique in their capacity to justify atrocities by way of storybook bullshit. You can't ask people nicely to follow your commands, to go against their own material interests, to cast aside their fucking culture. The trying to get the natives around the Rio de la Plata to cast aside probably ancient blood feuds? For this, who is this fucking guy telling us not to do this? Fuck that. I like killing shit. Cabeza de Vaca, and yeah, I am asking too much of him, but this is his connection with the kid, attempted to force a unity of existence gently. He didn't interrogate the supremacy of Spain over these people, like he thought they should just be nicer about their supremacy. Dominate in a nice kind of way. This is a Blood Meridian essay, and Blood Meridian is a very, spiritual exploration of history and violence. Not a political one, strictly speaking. But there's a great master's thesis on the reality of Cabeza de Vaca. It's called Colonial Myths, The Conquest of Cabeza de Vaca by Willie Hurst. Hurst demonstrates Cabeza de Vaca is very much a wolf in sheep's clothing. There were no clothing. He was naked the whole time, it was sort of his thing. At no point does he stop serving the existing desire of the Spanish Empire to dominate this region, because the Pope gave it to them, and the Pope gets to do that, I guess. The Spanish Empire was insistent that it be done. And Cabeza de Vaca clearly demonstrated it could not be done nicely. Cabeza de Vaca's story, emotionally as a story, it's really powerful. He did change, and I respect that. He had a place in the world, and he was correct to recognize that place was wrong. That there's nothing chivalrous about beating the shit out of people and stealing their stuff and telling them how to live. But he never turned his alienation, his disenchantment, into anything real. His story will make you question, can we turn our disenchantment into anything? Once we know what war is, can the knowing save us? I hope it's charming that she's constantly screaming and not annoying. There's only so much I can do. I beat her, but not hard enough, clearly. What follows is the judge speaking to the kid. It frankly could verbatim be a lawyer attacking Las Casas at his audiencia, or a trial. You came forward to take part in a work, but you were a witness against yourself. You sat in judgment on your own deeds. You put your allowances before the judgments of history, and you broke with the body of which you were pledged a part and poisoned it in all its enterprise. For it was required of no man to give more than he possessed, nor was any man's share compared to another's. Only each was called upon to empty out his heart into the common, and one did not. But what happened to North America? Well, Nuno de Guzman, that son of a bitch, he's gone. I bet everything turned out great. Well, there were two expeditions which followed Narvaez's into the interior of North America. Both were inspired by Cabeza de Vaca's reports. The expeditions of De Soto and Coronado. We'll be discussing the Coronado expedition for obvious reasons. A Franciscan friar scouted north with Estebanico, acting as a guide and translator. Because the joint report, which was submitted by the survivors of the expedition, could be interpreted as evidence that there were rich cities up there somewhere, hiding. The French priest and black servant would probe these reports, Estebanico reached the Pueblo country but soon died as a suspected spy. Fray Marcos de Niza said he came as close as he dared to Cibola, and then returned homeward in all haste. Marcos's subsequent report to the viceroy was rather ambiguous, but it seemed to confirm the presence of wealthy cities. Any ambiguity in the priest's vision was soon magnified by rumor and sermons into the fabulous Seven Cities of Cibola, a novel elaboration of the fabled Seven Cities of the Antilles of Portuguese legend. After 3 years of patient work, Viceroy Mendoza could congratulate himself at Compostela on his splendid assembly of force and organization. He personally had invested 60,000 ducats, a fortune at the time, in this enterprise to reach the Seven Cities of Cibola. The Viceroy was equally determined to do the job humanely. He despised the cruel methods of his former rival, Bloody Guzman. Just over and over, nothing changes, homie. Holy shit. This bold quest. How'd it go? Not great. Only a few dozen conquistadors died, but there was no wealth to be found. It was just a massive waste of time and money on their end, and obviously it was devastating to the Indians. There was a big death toll on their end, which we can't really count. New Mexico would eventually be conquered by the Spanish, and the slaving would continue. Spaniards on horseback, like those employed by Guzman, would continue to raid Indian villages and rancherias as a source of easy forced labor. Treating your own borders as a source of slaves would, of course, have long-term consequences. Bear in mind that, according to the fucking lies that were maps of the Spanish Empire, this is a delusion, no bearing on reality. Supposedly, these guys were actually well within their borders. The Spanish Empire's frontier had often operated in this cognitively dissonant place, where the Indians were both citizens of the empire, yet also the empire really exercised no actual control over them because they could not, other than, occasionally they would just steal some of them. Consider what this would be doing to people. The loss of your family members to violence and slaving would inevitably foster a feeling of hopelessness. Certainly, it's hard to build a village and plant crops when it's best to stay on the move, as Cabeza de Vaca noted. The Spanish didn't bring civilization anywhere. They harvested civilizations. The slaving of this region would lead to the abandonment of many pueblos, and in their place arose the nomadic barbarians, whose skills as warriors has become enshrined in both American and Mexican history. The Comanche and the Apache. But in truth, the sheer horror touched everyone here. Just an awful, awful place. There's a passage for you if you want to stop and read it. This section is obviously very long. But, a bad neighborhood. The conquistadors made a place you didn't want to be caught lacking in. I discussed this before, and I was accused of bias. That's not how history works. I'm establishing causality, you fucking snowflake. It wasn't sunshine and rainbows before this. It was not. But the Spanish objectively made this place worse. Certainly less civilized. The fact is, you come to northern Mexico, you come heavier, you don't come at all. Can you tell I've been watching The Sopranos? Also, you didn't want to be a girl or a woman in this place. They became the de facto medium of exchange. The judge has a low opinion of coins, so he would like that. When I first wrote this script, I had to go and remove over and over again the sarcastic, "How chivalrous" comment, because I kept doing it, because obviously none of this is fucking chivalrous. I couldn't remove it here. Can you imagine anything less chivalrous than that? What happened to being nice to girls? The Comanche of the Great Plains and the Ute, but we're not talking about the Ute here, once they secured access to horses, they took that role once occupied by the Spaniards. That's an important dimension here, and I'm not saying the Comanche wouldn't have done it otherwise, but they were responding to a market demand. Historical materialism is a bitch. The Apache, however, were victimized by both Spaniards and Comanche, and so they developed into a brutal raiding culture. During Mexico's 11-year-long struggle for independence starting in 1810, the system of presidios, which had once defended against Apache and Comanche raids, were abandoned. The silver mines flooded due to neglect, and the Comanche and Apache began raiding the Mexicans themselves. Northern Mexico, in the mid-19th century, was just a nightmare of blood feuds. The worst place in history. Short of only the showers at Auschwitz, the Middle Passage, and my sink when I'm editing a video and I can't be fucking bothered. The desert Southwest had been, in pre-Columbian times, among the most populous and advanced places in the New World. Once again, no utopia. But the legacy of the conquistadors in the Southwest was by any conceivable metric a legacy of unspeakable violence, mutilation, hopelessness, and enslavement. A cycle of violence which could not be stopped, with the exception of... So America at this time was basically industrial Cthulhu. That's a big part of the Apache Wars, the Indian Wars in general. A lot of them didn't realize they weren't fighting Cthulhu. They weren't fighting a monster. They were fighting one of the monster's tentacles. It's sort of fucking haunting. As Rene Girard explained, violence spreads. It's an infection, and it can only be answered with itself. But to be historically materialist about it, someone was gonna do it. You know, it's hard to point fingers at specific Spaniards. Like, you take one bastard out and two more come in. Like, there's nothing... It's nature taking its course, and culture adjusting to the course that nature dictated. If there's a situation which can be taken advantage of for profit, unscrupulous men will arrive and they will take advantage. Culture will adjust to this reality, sanctifying it with nonsensical bullshit. This sort of thing actually happened a lot when what David Graeber called human economies existed next to market economies. We need only imagine what would be likely to happen in our own society if a group of space aliens suddenly appeared, armed with undefeatable military technology, infinite wealth, and no recognizable morality, and announced that they were willing to pay $1 million each for human workers. No questions asked. There will always be at least a handful of people unscrupulous enough to take advantage of such a situation. And a handful is all it takes. Rest in peace to a fucking real one. The inflection point where this all started was boys wanting to be knights. One man was disabused of that absurd fucking notion, and he'd become an exception to the rule that was this madness. And that exception really proved that rule, didn't he? The rule is that history is written in blood. Here, back there, everywhere. From the beginning until the end. This is the situation. DJ Peach Cobbler, can you say, with your internet dumb guy voice? Why aren't you talking about Blood Meridian? This is a historical analysis of Blood Meridian's themes. What is the point of summarizing a book? I don't get it. A historical analysis, guys. With a particular focus on the disenchantment of war, the breakdown of the very narratives which fuel it, and how, once those narratives are broken down, the war just keeps going anyway. And then you say, still in the internet dumb guy voice, when does this guy talk about Blood Meridian? I have been. You were just too stupid to understand the book. Blood Meridian famously does not give the reader insight into the character's thoughts. This is a narrative tool which serves the theme of deconstructing the narratives which fuel conflict. You were exposed to the violence without the absolution which narrative provides. The violence is just naked before you. While avoiding characters' innermost thoughts supports the theme of disenchantment, it also makes it hard to analyze the disenchantment. Make no mistake, it is present, and I do have a lot of evidence, but I think it would behoove us to analyze first how disenchantment is prominent in two books, which unquestionably served as great inspirations for Blood Meridian. Since you don't get insight into a character's thoughts, you don't get that moment where the character thinks, damn, maybe war is bad and mindless, and all the narratives we attach to the violence, like it's just sick machinations of our twisted monkey minds. Consider first Samuel Chamberlain, whose unpublished memoir, My Confession, served as the primary historical inspiration for Blood Meridian. From Samuel's account comes the vast majority of our information on the actual historical Glanton Gang, and of course the iconic villain, Jim Adler, the Texas Hand. This book is filled with horniness, typos, and obvious lies. There is a ghost story. It's fucking incredible. And it might be the best account I've ever read of war. I've decided to include most of the typos and grammatical errors because they're just everywhere. And sometimes I'm like, it's part of the story, all right? A common cliche of the chivalric romance is the temptress, the saucy trollop, sometimes a sorceress, who attempts to seduce our brave, chaste Christian hero via some combination of witchcraft and feminine charms. Is there a difference between the two? Someone or something was sacrificed on some altar to create Elle Fanning. Elle Fanning is clearly an illusion cast by Morgan Le Fay to convince me to act the fuck up. Elle, please email me if retaking Constantinople will impress you. I'll drop this anti-war shit like that. I don't fucking care. I lost count the amount of young women who throw themselves at this motherfucker. And you know what Samuel does in response? No thank you, ma'am. No pussy from me. I'm too goddamn gallant for pussy. Think of your virtue, you stupid slut. So, there are 3 possibilities for this. Possibility 1. Samuel was just catnip for BPD hoes. That's just the hand some of us are dealt. She said she loved me as dear and fondly as ever, that it was all my own fault. And in the next line said she hated me, and before she consented to be the wife of the man she was to marry, she had told him all she had sworn to kill on sight. Once again, these typos, you get the gist. I just love, what a change in 2 months. Possibility 2. He's a liar and he's lying. I usually just call them liars when they start bragging about how fucking cool they are. That's basically what this video is. But Samuel, unlike all the sources I use, which tend to be like, a lot of them include literally the first pages, I have never lied about anything ever, and don't you dare accuse me of that. Samuel, unlike those guys, he's clearly fucking with you sometimes. I was a boy of a man's proportions, muscles like steel, not bad looking, and very modest. Ha 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 ha. Good one, Samuel, very original. Number 3, he had fucking game. The guy just had unimaginable game. So I believe it is possibility 3. He's obviously exaggerating. Middle-aged man talking about himself in his youth, like, you know, I played high school football, I ever tell you that? I could have gone pro, you know. YouTube was just my backup, this fucking bum knee. Back in the day, I could have thrown a football over them fucking mountains. How much this random historical figure, who looked like this decades later, fucked, should not be relevant to this video. But it is. He had a thing about being gallant and chivalrous, faux the shouties. I wanted to open our discussion on Samuel's book on this, not only to highlight this whole chivalry thing he's got going on, but also, I have to mention this. He clearly had a racially informed Madonna whore complex. Classic. Once he reaches Mexico, he becomes far less concerned with the virtue of the young women who throw themselves at him. Homie loved the Latinas. Samuel really embodies chivalry at the start, intentionally or unintentionally. Samuel Chamberlain's arc is that of a knight being undone. Through battle after battle, his armor is stripped away, and then at the end, he is nearly as immoral and depraved as the very degenerates he once fought against. Samuel begins his account at the age of 16 in Boston in 1844. He's studying to become a man of the cloth, and he has a fling with a girl. So he gets expelled from school. From there, he does what many a young man did at the time. He makes his way west, specifically to his uncle's farm in Arkansas, which was near a girls' school. Naturally, Samuel and the girls become close. He saves them from a fire. His uncle is an asshole who hates him, but it's important to note that Samuel certainly had a problem with authority. Samuel's time with his uncle ends in violence, as Samuel's cousin talks some shit and hits Samuel in front of the girls.
Oh, you have chosen death.
Quick as a flash, my left shot out, catching him on the breast and sending him to the ground with a heavy thud. A scream from all the girls made me look round just in time. My precious uncle was rushing on me with an uplifted axe. To avoid the blow, wrenched the murderous weapon from his hands with a blow from my fist. To lay him beside his motionless son was but the work of a moment. I felt all on fire. With one foot on his chest, I brandished the axe to brain him. The girls shrieked and some fainted. When my better nature prevailed, and throwing the horrid weapon away, I sat down on a log and cried like a child. He's got a real Ryan Gosling thing going on. He's me. How can I hate this guy? Samuel presents himself as a righteous, strong, brave, yet sensitive and caring young man with an artistic side and a strong moral compass. He ends fights. He doesn't start them. And he cries. He cries a lot. That's not in the historical accounts. Even Geronimo finding his scalped family massacred in the desert, like, he specifically mentions how little he talked, how he just stared, like I didn't cry. The only mention I have ever seen of an eyewitness account, like, saying, I cried, like, that's Cabeza de Vaca's account. And even in that case, it's like, hey, all the other homies were crying too, alright? The Blood Meridian stuff is only the last 50 or so pages of this. The vast majority of the book takes place during the Mexican-American War, where Samuel served as a dragoon, a mounted infantryman. So, why did he serve in this war? Isn't it obvious? The time came to depart for Mexico. My mind wandered in bright dreams of glory and renown in that region of romance, the land of Cortez and Montezuma. On this march, I was constantly reminded of scenes in Don Quixote. In fact, the costumes, customs, and buildings are all borrowed from old Spain with but little change. The barber's basin, the skins of wine, quaint old inns with fun-loving dulcineas exist in all their purity here. Is he fucking with me? Does he know what he's doing? He must know what he's doing. Fucking... Alright. So, Don Quixote is the most famous book of Spanish literature. Published during the golden age of the Spanish Empire, roughly 60 years after all that Cabeza de Vaca shit I talked about, Don Quixote was born Alonso Quijano, a Spanish hidalgo who has a great love of chivalric romances. But in time, from too much reading and not enough sleeping, these romances drive him mad. He dons a rusted suit of armor, mounts his old workhorse Rocinante, and sets off to become a knight-errant himself, righting wrongs, rescuing damsels, and fighting monsters. Naturally, there are no damsels to rescue, no monsters to fight, and most wrongs are actually not solved by committing aggravated assault on random strangers. He is joined by Sancho, an illiterate farmer and his squire. Once Don Quixote promises him an island he can govern at the end of their quest. The details will be worked out later, Sancho. Good islands come to men who wait. In reality, there is obviously no island. There's no quest. He's insane. He's lost the thread of reality. The first volume is mostly just Don Quixote running around in the woods, beating up random strangers. The second volume is once people know of him and his madness, and he sort of becomes a famous lunatic. He gets fucked with by a duke and duchess a lot. It's definitely the highlight of the whole thing. He mistakes inns for castles, windmills for giants, a barber's basin for the mythical helmet of Mambrino. The most banal things are, in his mad gaze, fantastical. Obstacles, boons, or charming backdrops for his glorious quest. A hidalgo was a member of the Spanish nobility, minor nobility. This was the socioeconomic class that the vast majority of conquistadors belonged to. To be clear, I'm not suggesting that Cervantes was intentionally trying to make this comparison, no matter how ridiculously apt the comparison is. Conquistadors are often said to resemble Don Quixote by people in the know, but rarely is Don Quixote itself considered an intentional commentary upon conquistadors. If Cervantes did that, he really played his cards close to his chest, but Cervantes was a veteran. He'd lost his hand in war, and it's hard to not see in Quixote's foolish fantasy and Sancho's desire for material reward something like what does inspire boys to go to war. The book demonstrates that Cervantes was both intimately aware of many chivalric romances and also hated them. This is genuinely a powerful work of art, an unquestionable achievement, an exploration of stories and our relationship to stories. It's as playful and funny as it is serious and tragic. So, the Spanish Empire gets 1. I'm giving them 1. Its capacity to produce armored lunatics, fictional and otherwise, truly unsurpassed. Samuel's image of himself is tested in Mexico, to put it lightly. Don Quixote, he didn't adventure through a dangerous place. He is the danger in the place, save for some bandits he briefly stumbles upon who think his chivalrous stuff is super cool and admirable. Just saying. Samuel's arc is that of Don Quixote in Vietnam. He witnesses horrible atrocities by his own countrymen, and then watches the officers do nothing. He's brave, but insubordinate. There's a powerful mismatch between war as it is and war as Samuel believes it could be. Like a nice war, you know? Can't we go do one of those? He rescues no small number of dulcineas from dastardly mustachioed bandidos. Once again, Samuel's racism is heavily influenced by his penis. What's important to note is this. We are 300 years after all that conquistador shit I've been talking about. The Indians have become brutal slavers like the men who once slaved them. Mexicans are now the subjects of slaving raids. And, everything gotten all topsy-turvy and flipped around, but one thing has not changed a fucking bit. Most of the country to the northwest of Chihuahua was at this time practically unknown to the rest of the world. The citizens of Chihuahua gave us vague traditions of great cities in the far north, inhabited by white Indians called pintos, of rivers that run over beds of gold pebbles, of beautiful women who fought mounted and ate their prisoners. In short, the most fabulous stories were told us. I must confess that I rather took stock in these romances, for a warm imagination had prepared me to expect many strange and startling adventures in the unknown land. That is his confession, the fantasy he fell for, and how it ruined him. Samuel gets in trouble with the army and finds himself imprisoned and soon to be hanged. Luckily for him, he shares his cell with a certain unsavory character, a scalp hunter in the infamous Glanton Gang named Crying Tom Hitchcock, who's going to take him to that bold frontier. Of course, the scalp hunter knew where he was taking the boy, what was about to happen. There is a genuine tenderness to Samuel's account, which is absent in Blood Meridian. A plan was agreed on, and I laid down to sleep, but my mind was too active to rest. The step I was about to take, to separate myself from all civilization and friends, to join a band of outlaws, for such the scalp hunters were considered, even by the half-savage frontiersmen, was an act to make one think and reflect. In the morning, Tom Hitchcock was released, and his arms restored to him, and with a significant look at me, the ranger departed, crying. Now, due to Samuel's whole Don Quixote thing, a lot of this book is him stopping women from being ravished. By the middle, he begins to fail. The violence surrounding him, it overwhelms him. Like there's only so much he can fight. He gets real sweet on one girl. You get the sense he lost something when he loses her. He watches his fellow soldiers perpetuate abhorrent atrocities, which go completely unpunished. Cormac McCarthy alludes to the conduct of our brave troops in Mexico pretty accurately. These people had seen Americans in plenty. Dusty, laggard trains of them, months out of their own country and half crazed with the enormity of their own presence in that immense and blood-slaked waste. Commandeering meal and meat, or indulging a latent taste for among the slow-eyed girls of that country. It's another story of disenchantment. Not just banality beneath a fantasy, but fantasy drawing men in to genuine horror. Fantasy making these men horrible themselves. Samuel, though, he tries, and boy, does he prevent a lot of ravishings. Why am I believing this guy? No, genuinely, why do I believe any of this shit? Moi? DJ Peach Cobbler? Mr. No one in history has ever done anything good, ever? Come on, I'm falling for this fucking guy. Is this Ryan Gosling aura that powerful? I believe in a lot of the absurdities of Samuel's account, obviously not all of it, largely due to, there's no delicate way to put it. Once he's in the Glanton Gang, he just lets it happen. He doesn't participate, according to his own account, but he lets it happen. To his credit, he does realize pretty quickly he cannot do this shit anymore. That night, another disgusting orgy was indulged in by Glanton, and most of his band, which now numbered only 15. I'd become so thoroughly horrified with the hellish deeds of my companions that dread feelings akin to the nightmare took possession of me, making my days miserable and my nights a series of fearful dreams. I sounded Ben Tobin, Hitchcock, and Long Webster on the subject of quitting the gang and going to the mines in California. They were as disgusted as myself, and we agreed to start whenever a favorable opportunity presented itself, and formed our plans accordingly. Whoa! Shirt change! Samuel's story is haunting, and it was never published during his life. He had to go to war again. The Civil War started, and he had to go gun down some goddamn graycoats. War cannot be stopped completely by disabusing young men of these stupid notions of what war is. It is inevitable. Most of Blood Meridian naturally draws from Samuel's account. But Samuel draws, in no small part, whether knowingly or unknowingly, from conquistador accounts and the stereotypical chivalrous knight. Another famous, it is here. A miracle. My floor is covered with all the books but the ones I need usually. Another famous inspiration for Blood Meridian is Moby Dick by Herman Melville. Now this is going to be a brief analysis, right? It's just a side quest for our broader point here. Moby Dick is a book about how killing whales is awesome, and you should be doing that right now. I didn't want to read Moby Dick, I'm going to be honest with you. This is a historical exploration of Blood Meridian. It would muddy the waters. But Moby Dick was not only an obsession of McCarthy, insert joke here, but it's also very much about knights on a quest being disillusioned by the reality of their quest. Don Quixote is still like just a funny book, and it's entertaining. I see a lot of myself in him, many men have. How many times have I read this fucking comment? One minute they thought him an intelligent man, and the next minute he skidded off into absurdity, and they couldn't decide where to place him between sound sense and madness. Literally me, for real. Pan-American exceptionalism. Also, being driven mad by books, like my books are real, but like that's my whole bit. I wanted to read Don Quixote, and I had for some time. The premise was interesting. I did not want to read Moby Dick. I don't care about whales. Fuck your whales. Ooh. Look at this useless fucking thing. What does it even do? The book opens with pages of quotes about whales. I started to realize, oh, this is sort of gonna suck. But by the end of these 5 or so pages of sheer whale citations, why don't I think about whales? The book opens with a discussion of how men long for the sea, even if they never answer that call. Literally, the first page, once you're past those whale quotes, do not skip the whale quotes. It says, with a philosophical flourish, Cato throws himself upon his sword. I quietly take to the ship. There is nothing surprising in this. If they but knew it, almost all men in their degree, some time or other, cherish very nearly the same feelings towards the ocean with me. Once the sailing actually begins, the narrator Ishmael likens whalers to soldiers. Why are soldiers and generals lionized and celebrated while the humble whaler and captain are ignored? Doubtless one leading reason why the world declines honoring us whalemen is this. They think that, at best, our vocation amounts to a butchering sort of business, and that when actively engaged therein, we are surrounded by all manner of defilements. Butchers we are, that is true. But butchers also, and butchers of the bloodiest badge, have been all martial commanders, whom the world invariably delights to honor. And as for the matter of the alleged uncleanliness of our business, ye shall soon be initiated into certain facts hitherto pretty generally unknown, and which, upon the whole, will triumphantly plant the sperm whale ship at least among the cleanliest things of this tidy earth. But even granting the charge in question to be true, what disordered, slippery decks of a whale ship are comparable to the unspeakable carrion of those battlefields from which so many soldiers return to drink in all ladies' plaudits? Their bravery is compared to that of famed explorers, namely Captain Cook, who would have had no time for all this fucking ruminations on the mysterious whales. Ooh. Captain Cook's first words were, "What is the heading and wind speed, mother?" The Prophet, explicitly describing the crew of the ship as knights and squires, 2 chapters of that. This group of men united in service to a violent quest. But we're here for that tasty, tasty disenchantment, aren't we? Yes, I'm sorry. It's actually not a book about how awesome this shit is. Once a whale is actually killed on page 303, great book. Little meandering. But it meanders for a reason. The narrator doesn't just work to convince you of the bravery of the humble whaler, but the majesty, strength, and mystery of whales themselves. I haven't been thinking about them enough. How could I have missed the whales? Once a whale is actually killed and butchered, I felt physically sick. It is a disgusting sequence. I respected the whale now, Ishmael. You convinced me. But what grandeur the sperm whale possesses, that comes to the detriment of the decency of the men who butcher it, right? What a massive mistake you have made, Herman Melville. What a hack writer. I can't believe he missed that. Stubb, the second mate of the ship, is the man who lays that beast low. In celebration, he has the cook prepare a nice whale steak for him, and he eats it as sharks feast upon the now rotting whale carcass lashed to the ship. We return also to a discussion of war. In this case, a battle at sea. Though amid all the smoking horror and diabolism of a sea fight, sharks will be seen longingly gazing up to the ship's decks, like hungry dogs round a table where red meat is being carved, ready to bolt down every killed man that is tossed to them. And though, while the valiant butchers over the deck table are thus cannibally carving each other's live meat with carving knives, all gilded and tasseled, the sharks also, with their jewel-hilted mouths, are quarrelsomely carving away under the table at the dead meat. And though were you to turn the whole affair upside down, it would still be pretty much the same thing. That is to say, a shocking, sharkish business enough for all parties. Yeah, this book sort of fucking rules. Gentlemen, women read more than us. And you know, I wasn't sold on the idea of them being allowed to read in the first place. And what do they read? The respectable ones read Jane Austen, and what a goddamn waste of time Pride and Prejudice is. It captures nothing of the human experience. I read the whole thing waiting for Elizabeth to scalp Mr. Darcy. Not once does a man draw blood in that trash. It's a waste of fucking time. The women are beating us, fellas, and I am vehemently sexist, but the fact is they're better than you. Who reads not? You probably thought that not was spelled N-O-T, didn't you? Read Moby Dick. I could go on for some time, analyzing Moby Dick's own Don Quixote thing, but it's a mere side quest in this video, wherein I have tilted at the discourse surrounding the most discussed book this decade. Now, I don't want to spoil Moby Dick, but the quest doesn't go great. Like, I'm not gonna quote a passage. Like, it's Moby Dick. It doesn't go great. They shouldn't have done this. Blood Meridian is rich in allusions to long-lost Christian texts, historical atrocities, and philosophy. But at base, it is a coming-of-age story about a child's loss of innocence through war, his alienation from his fellow man, yet how that alienation doesn't mean anything. War will correct your childish notion of what war is, but after you know what war is, you will be forced to watch. Perhaps you will be forced to continue to participate. On the first page, where the kid is described, McCarthy wrote, "All history present in that visage. The child, the father of the man." I hope that you can see how all of this was necessary for our more specific exploration of Blood Meridian, but now it is time. Let's talk about Blood Meridian. "It makes no difference what men think of war," said the judge. "War endures. As well ask men what they think of stone." The Glanton Gang are Disenchantment Manifest. A complete breakdown of the many narratives which fueled European imperialism. The narratives that idiots layered atop their animal desire to consume, kill, and dominate. The Glanton Gang, by being multicultural and abhorrently violent, achieved destruction of white supremacy, the notion that imperialism is a civilizing force, and our focus today, of course, any chivalric notions. But let's see that motherfucking child. The kid's folks are known for hewers of wood and drawers of water, but in truth his father had been a schoolmaster. He lies in drink. He quotes from poets whose names are now lost. The boy crouches by the fire and watches him. "Night of your birth, 33. The Leonids they were called. God, how the stars did fall. I looked for blackness, holes in the heavens. The dipper stove. The mother dead these 14 years did incubate in her own bosom the creature who would carry her off. The father never speaks her name. The child does not know it." There are dos cosas, things here to note. The first, most writers of medieval chivalric romances are now unknown to us. The original authors of Amadis, the poet behind Pearl, and Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, among many others. Considering the scarcity of information on the kid's father, I have to figure there is significance to this. I'm willing to concede he might have been quoting Beowulf, but that was also sort of the predecessor of the chivalric romance. Nonetheless, where do I put the erasers disappear? The Leonids, being referred to here, are a meteor shower, a particularly famous one. The night the stars fell is what the Apache called this evening in 1833. It was witnessed all across the continental United States. It was brought to my attention by this passage when I was reading The Apache Wars by Andrew Hutton. Hutton said it happened in 32. As far as I can tell, he's the wrong one here. The fictional book got the date right. It happened in 33. The point is, the dipper stove. I presume this passage is referring to the Big Dipper. Now, we ain't got no time for that baby stuff, fucking Little Dipper bitch. Stove is fairly archaic language. I know, you're shocked. Cormac McCarthy using archaic language? It was crazy. Stove is the past tense of stave. Stave meant to crash, to break inwards. I'd quote Merriam-Webster, but fucking look it up, whatever. Constellations aren't real. Stars are, though. Nature destroying, obscuring, breaking the story we put on top of it. An abstraction layered atop a material reality is shattered by that same material reality, which the story didn't actually bear any resemblance to. Also, clearly the falling stars are a metaphor for destiny. The kid falls west, you know what I'm saying? Fate is a prominent theme in the book, we will discuss that later. Material reality doesn't fucking care what you think about it. Your opinion is not being taken into account. Whatever you know or think you know, it doesn't fucking care. It is what it is. And what it is waiting for you. Remember all that shit I said in the beginning about being humble? Nah. We cooking like mama on a fucking Sunday today, boys. This is the first page of the fucking book. As far as connections to Cabeza de Vaca are concerned, Samuel Chamberlain is not the kid. The text makes that explicit. But their actual physical journeys are mostly similar. I find it very interesting that the kid lands in Galveston, where Cabeza de Vaca himself landed. Footnote. Samuel Chamberlain lands at Port Lavaca on page 35 in this edition I have. The kid is not chivalrous at the start of our story. He's a violent, illiterate vagrant right now. He's not a knight on a quest. Yet. He keeps off the King's Road for fear of citizenry. He's really more of a bandit. But the potential is there. An unexamined hatred of the alien and strange, which could be molded. The child's face is curiously untouched behind the scars, the eyes oddly innocent. They fight with fists, with feet, with bottles or knives. All men, all breeds. Men whose speech sounds like the grunting of apes. Men from lands so far and queer that standing over them where they lie bleeding in the mud, he feels mankind itself vindicated. The Judge Holden, our story's antagonist, is introduced at a traveling preacher's tent. He claims that he had seen this itinerant preacher in Fort Smith and that he is no man of the cloth, but a liar, an illiterate murderer, pedophile. Also, he fucked a goat. The crowd is whipped into a frenzy. Pistols are drawn, lead flies. The priest is killed, among, frankly, probably others, in the chaos, but it's only after the deed is done when it's revealed. When was he in Fort Smith? Fort Smith. Where did you know him to know all that stuff on him? You mean the Reverend Green? Yes, sir, I reckon you was in Fort Smith before you come out here. I was never in Fort Smith in my life. Doubt that he was. They looked from one to the other. Well, where was it you run up on him? I never laid eyes on the man before today. Never even heard of him. He raised his glass and drank. There was a strange silence in the room. The men looked like mud effigies. Finally, someone began to laugh, then another. Soon they were all laughing together. Someone bought the judge a drink. This is how the Judge Holden speaks to outsiders. He doesn't tell them that war is God and violence is the only thing that matters. No, that shit's scary. People don't like hearing that kind of thing. He appeals to their desire to be heroes. It's a joke. He likes doing this. To those outside the gang, he is a bullshitter. He's sort of a bullshitter to those inside the gang. We'll get into that. But such as here, where he says some Enlightenment-coded shit. It seems appealing to nature as an authority. The judge held up a chunk of rock. God speaks in stones and trees, the bones of things. The squatters in their rags nodded among themselves and were soon reckoning him correct, this man of learning and all his speculations. And this the judge encouraged until they were right proselytes of the new order, whereupon he laughed at them for fools. If you are a white supremacist, or really any idiot that believes in all these ideologies, like war violence is like the core part, like, hey, this is who deserves it, fellas. You're falling for it. He's got you. The judge. Who is the judge? Not Jim Adler. We will talk about what the Judge Holden is. I had to make sure that you weren't here for all the wrong reasons. But it's not the Judge Holden who sends our hero to war. It is a man in Texas looking to organize a volunteer force, a filibuster, for the invasion of northern Mexico, where the judge is otherworldly, verbose, and well-read. Captain White, little on the nose, is a John Cremony type. A wholly representative and entirely unimpressive, useful tool for white supremacy and imperialism. He's an ignorant fool, a slave of nature, an understander of nothing, not even himself. And how does he convince the kid to go to war? The Mexicans are a people so cowardly they've paid tribute 100 years to tribes of naked savages, given up their crops and livestock, mines shut down, whole villages abandoned, while a heathen horde rides over the land, looting and killing with total impunity. Not a hand raised against them. What kind of people are these? The Apaches won't even shoot them. Did you know that? They killed them with rocks. The captain was watching the kid. The kid looked uneasy. "Son," said the captain, "we are to be the instruments of liberation in a dark and troubled land." "That's right. We are to spearhead the drive." He leaned forward and placed his hands on his knees. "And we will be the ones who will divide the spoils. There will be a section of land for every man in my company, fine grassland, some of the finest in the world. Land rich in minerals and gold and silver, I would say, beyond the wildest speculation. You're young, but I don't misread you. I'm seldom mistaken in a man. I think you mean to make your mark in this world. Am I wrong?" The calling the kid the man, such army recruiter shit. Cormac McCarthy's command of Wild West history is powerful, and I really quick wanted to acknowledge that he seems to be referencing, where is it? Geronimo himself. Mexicans, Geronimo spat. Mexicans, my women can whip all the Mexicans in Chihuahua. But the Mexicans have plenty of cartridges, Davis argued, and you have practically none. "We don't fight Mexicans with cartridges," the warrior boasted. "Cartridges cost too much. We keep them to fight your white soldiers. We fight Mexicans with rocks." It is important to note here, the year is 1849. The Mexican-American War is over. These men are going to raid Mexicans without any sort of legitimacy beyond the shallow rhetoric of Captain White Power. Just the notion they are spearheading anything, that they're going to be the liberation of a dark and troubled land. The kid is also uneasy. This fantasy reassures him. But of course, the fantasy is quickly dispelled as the book progresses. No riches, no fine grassland, only a great scarred desert which had drunk blood for centuries and showed no sign of its thirst being quenched. A Mennonite, who were like a diet Amish. Listen, I gotta cut off the research at some point. They look like, they seem like cool guys. The Mennonite says, my fucking thesis, essentially, before these troops cross into the other world, there is no such joy in the tavern as upon the road thereto. Also, as a former drunk, yes. You don't even like being drunk, you like the getting drunk. You like ooh, I got all my fucking booze with me. You're very excited about it. This is not the only advice from a religious man who attempts to snap the kid back into reality, as the figure who works to guide the kid back onto the right path in the Glanton Gang is an ex-priest named Tobin. I'm gonna speculate real wildly. Humility mode activated. I'm now armored from criticism. You are not allowed to complain. I think Tobin is intended to reflect Bartolome de las Casas. We'll get more into that later. Just a bit, bear with it for now. All right, bear it in mind. But he is a figure who's advocating for improvements to an unimprovable situation because that situation is nature. You know, I love walking up to wasps' nests and presenting a 1,000-page dissertation on why they shouldn't sting me. I keep trying this, but it doesn't seem to ever work. It is important to note that Tobin isn't really in the same role in Samuel Chamberlain's account. Samuel likes him, but he doesn't act like this angel on his shoulder the way he does in Blood Meridian with the kid. I looked, and I cannot find that happening a single time. The imagery used when the men first cross into northern Mexico is surreal and haunting, sinister and almost magical. As Sean noted, rivers were not an uncommon border between reality and the other world. Also, yes, St. Elmo's fire, like what within the fucking whale book. That night they rode through a region electric and wild, where strange shapes of soft blue fire ran over the metal of the horses' trappings, and the wagon wheels rolled in hoops of fire, and little shapes of pale blue light came to perch in the ears of the horses and in the beards of the men. All night sheet lightning quaked sourceless to the west beyond the midnight thunderheads, making a bluish day of the distant desert. The mountains on the sudden skyline stark and black and livid like a land of some other order out there whose true geology was not stone, but fear. The thunder moved up from the southwest and lightning lit the desert all about them. Blue and barren, great clanging reaches ordered out of the absolute night like some demon kingdom, Summoned up were changeling land that comes the day would leave them neither trace nor smoke, nor ruin more than any troubling dream. Otherworld. No, this is just the desert. Once again, Sean, you're my fucking boy. You know that? Let me touch your sweater, you son of a bitch. It is here, in the other world, where this filibuster learns that what they're doing, the raiding of the Mexicans, it's a pretty popular hobby in this area. They are a junior high basketball team, and they are about to play the fucking Bulls. They are set upon by a Comanche war party, a legion of horribles. I'm a sensitive fella. I don't know if you picked up on that. I'm not exaggerating when I say I got an adrenaline rush, like not in a fun way, in a rubbery hamstrings way, when I read the infamous Legion of Horribles passage. I want to read it here. It really doesn't work if it's read to you. Like if you want to do an audiobook, do it, but it really just flows better off the page. Nonetheless, it is quite disenchanting, also unfilmable. If you don't show a Comanche warrior a dying American troop, you're a goddamn coward, and you shouldn't bother making the movie. It's the most important line of the entire book, beyond war is God. Blood Meridian makes no explicit allusions to Don Quixote, as far as I can tell. There are some connections, but they're very loose, and I grew unconvinced they were connections. There's a story within a story, for example. It mostly explores disenchantment through the chivalrous language, the Moby Dick, Samuel Chamberlain thing. All the pretty horses, which it's intellectually less powerful, but like, what a much more pleasant read this is. He gets stabbed in a Mexican prison. Like, it's not nice, but my God, is it just less awful. Ugh. But this is McCarthy's way more overt Don Quixote exploration. This is just a little thing I just wanted to mention, but I think it bears mentioning, considering what role these Comanche genuinely serve in the story. A fabled horde of mounted lancers and archers bearing shields bedight with bits of broken mirror glass that cast 1,000 unpieced suns against the eyes of their enemies. It depends on the translation you read, but Don Quixote's greatest foe, besides himself, his madness, is the Knight of Mirrors, who is covered in mirrors shaped like crescent moons. The Knight of Mirrors is, in reality, perfectly sane. He's a lawyer who wanted to help Quijano and his niece and all the people that, you know, they don't want their relative and friend running around in the woods doing all this crazy shit. He's a reflection of Don Quixote, taking on the image of the Knight Errant so that he can defeat a Knight Errant. The point of the Knight of Mirrors, or the Knight of Spangles, once again, it depends on the translation, is to literally knock sense into this motherfucker, to disenchant the Mad Knight. If this passage accomplishes anything, besides freaking you the fuck out, it is highlighting the absurdity of these knights in their quest, how severely they had failed to understand it, and how the line between them and the Legion of Horribles, in terms of like what they're there to do, there is no line. One group think they're cool chivalrous knights. The other group knows what war fucking is. Of course, here we also see the first of Blood Meridian's several allusions to the Conquistadors. One Comanche was in the armor of a Spanish conquistador, the breastplate and pauldrons deeply dented with old blows of mace or saber done in another country by men whose very bones were dust. Also, I want to note, Bork didn't actually have conquistador armor. Although McCarthy would not have known this, it was a suit of Indian armor, possibly even a costume made for theater. I'd be lying if I said I was not horribly disappointed. Cabeza de Vaca recorded one of the few genuinely heartwarming moments in the bloody and horrible history of Spanish colonization. As I said, it was the Karankawa, the natives of the Texas Gulf Coast, who rescued the conquistadors. They were the first Indians to show these marauding knights any kindness whatsoever. Why did they show them kindness? As I said, it was partially the conquistadors didn't have weapons and armor anymore. They were just inherently like more vulnerable looking people. But there's one thing in particular that really endeared these starving conquistadors to the Karankawa. It pleased our Lord that searching for the remnants of our former fire, we found wood with which we built big fires, and then with many tears begged our Lord for mercy and forgiveness of our sins. Upon seeing the disaster we had suffered, our misery and distress, the Indians sat down with us, and they all began to weep out of compassion for our misfortune. For more than half an hour they wept so loudly and so sincerely that it could be heard from far away. This is one of the few nice moments in all these fucking accounts, man. It's important to note that other rafts landed on the Gulf Coast, and these others were not so lucky. They did not cry. They were just fucking murdered by the natives. In the aftermath of the battle with the Comanche, the kid and another volunteer wander through the wasteland of northern Mexico, through ruined villages and defiled cathedrals, starving and thirsty. Their lives are saved by the very people they had come to kill. The two events bear only a little resemblance to one another, but there are two passages which convince me this is intentional. Firstly, the Mexican officer says something very interesting. "Why you no hide?" he said. "From you?" "From I. We were thirsty." "Very thirsty, eh?" They didn't answer. He was tapping the flat of the sword lightly against the horn of his saddle, and he seemed to be forming words in his mind. He leaned slightly to them. "When the lambs is lost in the mountain, they is cry. Sometime come the mother, sometime the wolf." Cormac McCarthy does mention the Karankawa in a fascinating context. "They rode through a plaza, thronged with wagons and stock, with immigrants and Texans and Mexicans, and with slaves and Lipan Indians, and deputations of Karankawas, tall and austere. Their faces dyed blue and their hands locked about the shafts of their 6-foot spears, all but naked savages, who with their painted skins and their whispered taste for human flesh seemed outrageous presences, even in that fabled company." Fabled company. They're knights. This is pretty on the nose. Once again, we see a moment that is almost exactly like what is in Chamberlain's account, but there's been a purposeful change. General Wool's division left San Antonio for Mexico on September 25th. The command made quite an imposing appearance as they marched through the Grand Plaza of San Antonio, which was crowded with a motley assembly of wild-looking Texans, Mexicans in their everlasting blankets, black slaves, a sprinkling of Lipan Indians in full dress paint and feathers, white women, Indian women, and señoritas. Samuel, calm down. Yeah, the Karankawa were cannibals, which I've talked about before. There's a nuance to it. Many conquistadors chose not to join the Karankawa. They feared they were going to be sacrificed and cannibalized because they had fought the Aztec before. To be clear, the Karankawa did eat their greatest enemies, but only their greatest enemies. These were naked losers crying like bitches on a beach. Some of the conquistadors who joined the Karankawa managed to live. The ones who remained on the beach, they ate each other. The Karankawa were shocked and appalled, of course, by the unimaginable savagery of eating your friends. The fish are right there, guy. Once the kid joins the Glanton Gang, the book takes on the structure of a conquistador account, a picaresque sequence of mostly violent encounters, each more depraved than the last. They begin by scalping Apaches, then peaceful Indians, then finally Mexicans. Rhetoric at the most basic level, right? It's about meaning. What does this mean? What does that mean? Violence is, in spite of the judge's rhetoric, the death of meaning. Nothing means anything when men are butchering each other like this. Captain White attempted to imbue violence with meaning. To Judge Holden, violence is meaning. No matter the philosophical veracity of Judge Holden, I would not trust him. One thing is for sure. The kid would not have gone into the desert if the Judge Holden were in the place of Captain White. He looked uneasy. Without the initial fantasy, he never would have arrived here. The kid is absorbed into this bloodthirsty, yet wonderfully diverse mob. John Glanton, the scalp hunter, says, "Diversity is our strength." Here, all men are meat. To ask their origin is like asking a wolf its ancestry. It's a wolf! It's going to eat you! Also, it looks Italian. We see through the Glanton Gang a breakdown of the white supremacist narrative. Black, white, Indian, all are united in service to their appetite for violence. They are, almost completely, disenchanted with the notion of white supremacy. A saloon owner is shot when he attempts to force Black Jackson to eat at another table. John Glanton has a dream. As many readers of Cabeza de Vaca's account have noted, including Andres Resendez, Estebanico achieved equality in the American wilderness with the conquistadors. Like, they were all on the same level. I want to focus on one powerful moment where the kid is left to put down a wounded comrade. A Mexican militia is in hot pursuit of the Glanton Gang, and so the wounded must be dispatched, lest they be tortured for information. Here, in the absence of his fellow butchers, the kid hesitates. Really, in all the violence, he almost disappears into it. He's almost never mentioned for a reason. We see, when he is alone, his genuine discomfort in this place that he's found himself, and the rules that place operates by. There's been some mistake. He wasn't supposed to be here, and he cannot bring himself to do it. The kid sat in the sand and stared off to the south. The Mexican was shot through the lungs and would die anyway, but Shelby had had his hip shattered by a ball, and he was clear in his head. He lay watching the kid. He was from a prominent Kentucky family and had attended Transylvania College, and like many another young man of his class, he'd gone west because of a woman. He watched the kid and he watched the enormous sun where it sat boiling on the edge of the desert. Any road agent or gambler would have known that the first to speak would lose, but Shelby had already lost it all. "Why don't you just get on with it?" he said. The kid looked at him. "If I had a gun, I'd shoot you," Shelby said. The kid didn't answer. "You know that, don't you?" "You ain't got a gun." I want to repeat one line here. Like many another young man of his class, he'd gone west because of a woman. I don't know why I'm blaming war. This is all clearly women's fault. Fucking hell, Fanning, make me want to burn and being so easy to enslave. If the women and children didn't want to be slaved, then they should learn karate or something. Regardless, I think there is some significance to this seemingly throwaway line. "There is no knight-errant who is not in love," said Don Quixote. This is the moment where we first see the kid faltering, even if we're not privy to his innermost thoughts. Like, it's not too hard to guess some of what he's thinking here. Really here, he's starting to think. He's starting to listen to a voice that he had learned to ignore. When a man suspects any wrong, it sometimes happens that if he be already involved in the matter, he insensibly strives to cover up his suspicions even from himself. In much this way it was with me. I said nothing, and tried to think nothing. This is where the kid is not only emotionally, but physically separated from the Glanton Gang, lost in a freezing desert. He survives only by the warmth of a miraculous burning tree. I did laundry. Hope you're fucking happy. The Archons fabricated material reality so that I would need to maintain my personal hygiene. And of course, the attempt to maintain my personal hygiene only halts my search for the truth. I want to mention another chivalric trope, as well as a moment mirroring Cabeza de Vaca's own experience, wherein an old female fortune teller predicts all that will come to pass. And the leaders of both groups, Panfilo de Narvaez and John Glanton, both ignore these prophecies. Certainly, this is a broad similarity. Countless details are different. Parallels between the Glanton Gang and the remnants of the Narvaez expedition can best be seen near the end of both of their journeys. Wandering through the desert southwest rendered both groups into, primitives. In Cabeza's case, this is because, they were just, naked and sunburnt. In Glanton's case, holy shit. Couts looked them over, haggard and haunted and blacked by the sun. The lines and pores of their skin deeply grimed with gun black where they'd washed the bores of their weapons. Even the horses looked alien to any he'd ever seen, decked as they were in human hair and teeth and skin. Save for their guns and buckles and a few pieces of metal in the harnesses of the animals, there was nothing about these arrivals to suggest even the discovery of the wheel. A recurring motif in Blood Meridian, which is also definitely referencing Genesis, but not just Genesis, there's a deeper idea at play here, is the men being covered by the dust of the landscape during their travels, their skin color literally being erased beneath the reality of where they are. To focus on disenchantment, unfulfilled fantasy, that Don Quixote thing, it may seem an odd approach for an exploration of Blood Meridian. Nonetheless, I think it is the most important part of the book, specifically how it feeds into what we do with our disenchantment, which will be the conclusion of this video. It's key to understanding what's going on here. This idea, I think, is best expressed in brief by Brown, who, in possession of an ornate and beautiful shotgun, demands a farrier saw the barrel shorter. The farrier refuses. It's a beautiful gun, it's almost like a piece of art, but it's a weapon designed to deal in death, and its owner is a man who knows that. A man that knows there's no space for the ornate, for the baroque, for the superfluous. In the business of death, there is only death. Speaking of fancy guns, and the notion that the Glanton Gang, Judge Holden specifically, embodies disenchantment, the destruction of the very narratives which draw young men into war, et in Arcadia ego. Even in paradise, there I am. This is what is inscribed on the Judge Holden's rifle. It is also an epitaph associated with shepherds' tombs in antiquity. Not only is such a statement, naturally, intended to disabuse idealistic notions, there's a deeper significance here. The Pastoral was the successor to the chivalric romance as the most popular literary genre. These can trace back their origins to antiquity, and largely revolved around shepherds in the woods, a beautiful, untouched nature, writing poems, doing their fucking lute solos. Readers of Don Quixote know that once the Knight of the Sorrowful Countenance is finally defeated by the Knight of Mirrors, well, he comes back as the Knight of the Moon, it doesn't matter. The point is, Don Quixote wants to become a shepherd at the end of his story. Once he's locked out of the knight-errantry business, he seeks to instead act out the pastoral fantasy. Of course, he dies, coming to terms with reality in his final moments, acknowledging the madness that is his quest. The post-conquest landscape of the American East is also described as pastoral while the kid is wandering through it. He wanders west as far as Memphis, a solitary migrant upon that flat and pastoral landscape. Here, the pastoral landscape is what follows the knights and their quests. Black Jackson, the uncreatively named black member of the Glanton Gang, is, like Estebanico, shot to death with arrows, in this case by the UMAS, and after this attack, the Glanton Gang is dissolved. The kid and the Judge Holden now find themselves locked in conflict, and while the kid first seems to succeed against him and does manage to escape, he also finds himself imprisoned for a time, like Cabeza de Vaca. The kid here begins being referred to as the man. His ascension to manhood accompanies his attempt to escape war itself. Cabeza de Vaca was not as righteous as we tend to describe him. A conquistador account is intel. They were addressed specifically to the king, and they served as vital reports of resources which could be exploited, the terrain and the culture of the Indians who lived there. Cabeza de Vaca provided our first European account of the North American buffalo. Much of the final chapter of Blood Meridian depicts the massacre of the buffalo, which was encouraged by the US military, but not, and I have looked into this, like, strictly speaking policy. They didn't just go out and kill a bunch of them. The invisible hand of the market killed those fucking buffalo, let me tell you. The trade in hides, specifically. Cabeza de Vaca saw just how lucrative such trade could be. Contrasting these two passages is haunting. This is Cabeza's account of the buffalo, once again, the first one ever, and what follows is the buffalo hunter the man speaks to in the last chapter of Blood Meridian. Cabeza is encouraging what we see. He didn't know this was the final result of the kind of shit he was saying, but Cabeza de Vaca didn't know a lot of fucking things, did he? These cows come from the north, across the country farther on, to the coast of Florida, and are found all over the land for over 400 leagues. On this whole stretch, through the valleys through which they pass, people who live here come down, and they live off them, subsisting on their flesh, so a great quantity of hides can be found all over that land. On this ground alone, between the Arkansas River and the Concho, there was 8 million carcasses, for that's how many hides reached the railhead. 2 years ago, we pulled out from Griffin for our last hunt. We ransacked the country. 6 weeks. Finally found a herd of 8 animals, and we killed them and come in. They're gone. Ever one of them that God ever made is gone as if they'd never been at all. The ragged sparks blew down the wind. The prairie about them lay silent. Beyond the fire, it was cold, and the night was clear, and the stars were falling. The old hunter pulled his blanket about him. I wonder if there's other worlds like this, he said, or if this is the only one. Let's summarize before we speculate on the existence of other worlds. The kid and Cabeza de Vaca's story share quite a few parallels. They both enter into the American West by way of Galveston. They both are disabused of chivalric notions by incredibly warlike, powerful Native Americans. They both only survive by the kindness of the people they came to kill and steal from. They both ignore prophecies from women which foretell all that will transpire. One of them becomes the favorite of an ex-priest, the other of a Dominican friar, who both advocated against the violent behavior of their comrades. They also both spend time in prison for refusing to serve the interests of their respective groups. And that tree thing, you cannot controvert that tree thing. It is not Moses. Give me a fucking break. I actually have a funny idea for the Vietnam Femboy video, so I sort of want you to find it. Also, I felt really pretty when I was filming it, but genuinely, I found some shit, man. That tree is a lot. Even if I have misunderstood the connection, a connection is absolutely being made here. But what is this all adding up to? That's the point. It adds up to nothing. Cabeza de Vaca also adopts an anti-war stance. He attempts to institute a kind conquest. He fails. The kid attempts to not participate in violence, and he too fails. As a child, not unlike himself as a boy, attempts to shoot him, and the man guns him down. I'm animated, but I'm not actually crazy. I'm passionate, I'm intense. All I ever tell you, really, is that you should be nicer to each other. And I don't care for the CIA. That's sort of a part of that, though. And I did name my cat after the CIA. She's my little acoustic kitty. Someone at the CIA clearly enjoys hearing me call them a good girl. Your tax dollars at work, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes I wonder if acting this crazy was a good idea, you know? My unhinged sense of humor, my intensity, like, is it fucking with me trying to communicate this message that you need to treat each other better? Does trying to tell you to treat each other better, does that even do anything? But the fact is, you can tell I'm not crazy by my interests. Spanish colonization, the American Indian Wars, these are not schizo-coded interests. History is crazy. I'm not. But this next thing, there's no coming back from this one. Where is it? My favorite book. Where is Breakfast of Champions? A rattlesnake looked like this. The creator of the universe had put a rattle on its tail. The creator had also given it front teeth, which were hypodermic syringes filled with deadly poison. Sometimes, I wonder about the creator of the universe. I am analyzing a book by a verified weirdo. He was an unapologetic reader of anything and everything. That's why the performative reading comment pissed me. It did get to me. It really did. Like, come on, man, this is what Blood Meridian is made of. I didn't write the fucking thing. Performative reading as a comment in general it pisses me off. Like, don't read Moby Dick or Don Quixote. You might accidentally be able to understand one of the most celebrated American authors of the 20th century. No. Go read Junie B. Jones or some shit. I'm an adult man and I read adult man books. What the fuck are you? The reason I act like this, the reason it seems like I ate a Slim Jim for breakfast, is because my favorite author is Kurt Vonnegut. I do genuinely believe you don't need to act like an intellectual to say something smart. If anything, I think it can get in the way, you know? All of them. You want to kill them all, huh? I am not trying to convert you to anything. But this is key to understanding Blood Meridian and fits quite nicely into what I'm discussing today. Cabeza de Vaca's story certainly slots well into it. That's for damn sure. Critter. We're gonna see how long. She can jump out, she knows that. Hey. I'm going to intentionally avoid the terminology for the most part. For the purpose of clarity, right? Like I won't say Numa, for example. We got places to be, man. Smarter people than myself have talked about this, and I will be pulling heavily from an essay and a paper on this subject. Graver's False and True, Blood Meridian as Gnostic Tragedy by Leo Doherty, and Striking the Fire Out of the Rock, Gnostic Theology in Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian by Petra Mundik. The Judge Holden is not Jim Adler, the Texas Hammer. Jim Adler, the Texas Hammer, fights for you, and the Judge Holden does not. The Judge Holden certainly embodies disenchantment in practice. He is the reality of war, which awaits true knights. But what he speaks of, like the essence of his rhetoric, is that he seeks domination. That domination is the only worthwhile pursuit. Even learning. Certainly, learning is a good thing, right? No. You are only learning in service to that goal, complete domination. Certainly, that is why the Judge Holden is learning. Whatever exists, he said. Whatever in creation exists without my knowledge exists without my consent. I cannot help but see parallels to the Conquistadors, right? The nature of the relation as intel. That moment in the shadow of the Anasazi ruins amid pictographs of Conquistadors, and I looked it up. They're not actually ones that are as ancient as I would have liked, but The Judge wanders through the ruins and collects artifacts, including the Conquistador's boot. He sketches these items into his book and burns the items once he's recorded them. An argument is held over whether recording the image of an item gives you power over it. But does that remind you of anything? The preservation and destruction? Knowing only in service to controlling? The Judge Holden is an Archon, and we'll get into what the fucking Archon is. But this is not a novel take. But some of you idiots thought he was the devil? Are you fucking serious? War is waged so we can dominate. Hey, That is my logic homework. I cannot tell my fucking professor that my cat ate my homework. She will not believe me. She'll write a syllogism that makes me look like an idiot. Don't do it. So the broad premise of Gnostic Christianity, a heretical branch of early Christian thought, is this. So you know the Old Testament God? That's not God. That's the Demiurge. Who's the Demiurge? Well, I'm glad you asked. He's a dick, and that's why everything sucks all the time. Created whenever Sophia attempted to comprehend chaos. We're gonna pull it back. Okay. The Demiurge is a dick. He created this material reality we live within. He also created these evil spirit demon things that are called archons. Matter is a trap and an illusion created by the Demiurge to delude and trap you. Well, part of you. You are composed, I ran out of white chalk, of 3 parts. 2 of them are evil. I'm sorry to say. But we're all about the silver linings here on my channel, and there is one. You have one good part. It's a shard of actual God from another place, a divine spark, a piece of the actual righteous alien God from another plane. And when you feel the call to do good against your own material interests, which compel evil, that is the call of that piece of God inside you, which seeks to return home. That piece of you that is God can only escape this material nightmare, which is antithetical to your ideals, if you achieve gnosis, or knowledge. This is why you cannot accept this world. The rules it plays by, your deepest, truest self was not made for this world. There has been a mistake. I've always suspected as much. A shard of an actual, righteous alien God is trapped here within you on this plane where war is God, but not the God. You see, the Demiurge made Anthem suck. EA, C-suite executives, as I always suspected, are enslaved by material reality, totally out of touch with their divine spark. I keep writing them letters, I try to tell them this, and they don't fucking listen. And this Demiurge son of a bitch, he's gonna kill my cat. I am not proselytizing. I have a lot of issues with broader Gnostic stuff. I've only really begun to read into this. A big problem is that it is catnip for schizos and deeply alienated weirdos who fetishize esoteric knowledge. I say it, and I fucking mean it. You need to be afraid of the things you want to believe. That is the one lesson I really pull from history. You gotta be careful about that shit you want to believe. Because what most people believe is, all this, it was made for me, actually. I will let you have some of it, if you help me have the rest. It's not all as compelling as what I have presented. It also lacks any central authority. It is a collection of lost books from the Bible and Greek philosophy and just esoteric gloop. There's no central authority. I've only scratched the surface, and this is not anything approaching comprehensive. I find all the earlier stuff pretty compelling. There is far less compelling stuff, but you get to pick and choose, which is very convenient. For example, it seems like in order to achieve gnosis, right, like how do Buddhists achieve nirvana? Meditation and practice and like learning to deny the material illusion around you. Gnostic Christians, however, they seem to escape this material reality by memorizing a bunch of Greek names for demons. So the demons speak Greek? Do I use like flashcards or? I flashcard my way out of the flesh prison? But how is any of this Christian? Right? Like I can't imagine a less Christian thought than thinking, you know, war is God and he's like this prison warden. He's trapped you here. Well, Gnostic thought actually precedes Christianity. The Gnostic belief was really just that, war is God stuff. And it was synthesized into the early and chaotic Christian church before eventually it came to be considered heretical. It turns out that Christians do not like it when you say all this stuff about God, but the main man JC was still pretty cool, pretty fucking hang loose kind of fella. He was sent here by the alien God with true gnosis smuggled in a balloon up his ass. If you have ever, like many have, wrestled with the insane contrast between New Testament nice Jesus God versus Old Testament vengeful God, this is an attempt at explaining that. They're two different guys. He demands fealty like a warlord. It doesn't just make him seem like hateful or mean, it makes him seem small and scared. Believe whatever you want, but that shit never added up to me. Stop eating my fucking logic homework. She's trying to keep me from achieving gnosis. You son of a bitch. I understand that this makes me uninviting essayist, but this is a massive project and I've had to cover a lot of ground. You should genuinely read the 2 essays that I have linked. Neither of them are long, and they really, as far as I'm concerned, their arguments are pretty incontrovertible. Because they don't just make a part of Blood Meridian make sense, they make the entire book make sense. Moondick's essay, I really hope that's how you pronounce that. Mundick, I don't know. He argues the false moneyer at the end of the book, the mentally challenged man covered in shit, being dragged around on a leash by the Judge Holden. That's the church. Blood Meridian is a heretical book. A text which is itself alienated not only from humanity, but God himself. Gnostic Christian belief explains all the most inscrutable parts of Blood Meridian. It is a book which makes, frankly, very little sense without some level of understanding this stuff. It is vehemently anti-Christian, in a way that shallow corporate, I twerked on the devil, aren't I subversive, shit cannot even dream of. I like a few of Lil Nas X's songs, and it doesn't piss me off, this. Like, are we over it? The crass Mr. Pickles type shit, it's passé and it's annoying. Shallow, performative, anti-Christian critiques designed only to piss off shallow, performative Christians. Like, what's being said here? I like pissing off grandmas. Blood Meridian has obsessed me for a few reasons. It is an exploration of the 19th century Southwest, violence, and the unavoidability of that violence. I'm all about this shit. The book was written for me. You're allowed to read it, but it was for me. Where is it? Oh! It is a book which is emphatically and unquestionably fighting God. Its greatest failure as a book is really just how genuinely revolting it is. Like, it's intentional, so it's not really a failure, but it makes it hard to enjoy. That really is only a testament to its effectiveness, and reminds me of Geronimo's last surrender to George Crook. He couldn't even look at him. Judgment. My God, do I hate judgment. I hate judgment because we love it, and we are not good at it. Having good judgment is no fun. Having good judgment is not judging unless it's absolutely necessary, because someone else had reached a judgment that they get to decide what you fucking deserve, and you deserve death, and you can't let that happen. So war is inevitable. This is the rule that this world plays by, and I get that. But if you have sound judgment, and you realize you need to stop them, you don't get to feel good about it. Because it's just like putting down a mad dog. It's not fun. You don't feel good. You're not killing monsters. You're not tilting at anything interesting. Just a deluded man. A slave to something, certainly. In Holden, the stressed archonic element is, of course, judgment. Yet, like Yahweh, he judges things simply according to the binary criterion of their being inside or outside his will. Fundamentally, when I look at the Age of Exploration, I see Europeans finding people outside their will and just... That is what the judges. Whether or not you are enthralled to him, the material illusion, or not. He is an archon. That's why he has the appearance of like being a demon, although he certainly is not. Conventional Christian thought casts demons as fundamentally weak, ineffective creatures. Fucking some water at them. Like they're born to be beaten. When I look at history, I don't think evil is easy to defeat. The great fantasy of J.R.R. Tolkien, which I love, wonderful, wonderful writer. I wish he was my fucking dad. Like that's, I don't know if you could love a writer more than that, than wishing they were your dad. But the shadow is not a passing thing. The alien god's will can only be expressed by illogical human behaviors, by refusing to play by the rules which dictate reality, such as, say, not shooting the guy who came out west for a girl, the kid sparing him. It is that act of mercy which marks him. He is dangerously in tune with the spark of the alien god, an apostate of the god of war, which the Judge Holden knowingly worships, and which all men unknowingly worship. There's a flawed place in the fabric of your heart. Do you think I could not know? You alone were mutinous. You alone reserved in your soul some corner of clemency for the heathen. In this way, the book is not as misanthropic as you may think. The only shard of good which exists in this horrible, horrible universe exists in living things, and man is the only vessel for this good which can be freed by achieving gnosis. The book is not arguing that man is pure evil. The book argues that man is the only thing in this world with any good in it whatsoever. In the beginning, the kid stops at an old man's house who feeds him a moldy soup. The old man himself wonders why we pine for something that cannot be made real, something that is only imaginary. His speech truly embodies Cabeza de Vaca's experience. The ability to imagine a better world is meaningless. This world is what it is. The way of the transgressor is hard. God made the world, but he didn't make it to suit everybody, did he? I don't believe he much had me in mind. Aye, said the old man. But where does a man come by his notions? What worlds he's seen that he liked better? I can think of better places and better ways. Can you make it be? No. No. It's a mystery. A man's at odds to know his mind, because his mind is aught he has to know it with. He can know his heart, but he don't want to. Rightly so. Best not to look in there. It ain't the heart of a creature that is bound in the way that God has set for it. You can find meanness in the least of creatures, but when God made man, the devil was at his elbow. A creature that can do anything. Make a machine, and a machine to make the machine, and evil that can run itself 1,000 years, no need to tend it. You believe that? I don't know. Believe that. The buffalo hunter, near the end. Is my shirt on backwards? No. Success. The buffalo hunter, near the end, also speculates upon the same notion. He feels a call to another world. Is there another world? They are homesick and stuck in this illusion. They yearn for something they cannot quite put their finger on. The epilogue depicts a mysterious figure wandering across the plain, striking the fire out of the rock which God has put there. A Gnostic savior. Those behind him remain bound by fate and ignorance, moving like machines. Despite the fact that the kid does not attain Gnosis and that the judge continues in his eternal dance proclaiming that he will never die, the conclusion of Blood Meridian is not entirely nihilistic. Every one of McCarthy's novels to date, no matter how bleak, and Blood Meridian is certainly among the bleakest, contains a tiny glimmer of hope reminiscent of the divine spark trapped in the manifest cosmos. The spark in Blood Meridian is to be found in the knowledge that transcendence is possible even in times of total, unrestrained depravity. Harold Bloom argues that this man striking fire in the rock at dawn is an opposing figure in regard to the evening redness in the west, or the blood-soaked sunset, which symbolizes the declining domain of the Archon Judge. Bloom suggests that though the Judge never sleeps, and perhaps will never die, a new Prometheus may be rising to go up against him. The epilogue assures us that there is one lone figure powerful enough to stand up to the forces of darkness. The Judge may be immortal and terrible beyond imagining, but he cannot stop the lone figure striking fire out of the rock. And as long as there are such pockets of autonomous life, the Judge will never be suzerain of this earth. I need to be careful about the things I want to believe. So, the kid has a flawed place in the fabric of his heart. An instinctual understanding of the wrongness of this place and the rules it operates by, and the necessary courage to let that illogical instinct dictate his behavior. The kid reminds us when he spares the man's life of Huckleberry Finn, who, in the crucial act of saving his friend Jim from slaveholder justice, similarly defies the will of a pernicious subculture, but who is judged only by his own cultural conscience, saying to himself at the novel's turning point, "All right then, I'll go to hell." Both these boys are a little bit awakened by the spark of the divine, and both extend acts of fraternal mercy when they are not supposed to. In the Mark Twain world, Huck gets away with it. In the McCarthy world, the kid is killed by the Judge for it in an outhouse. The kid has awakened, but he's not progressed sufficiently in wisdom, much beyond mere awakening, and thus has no chance of survival, much less at the victory of Gnostic liberation. Cabeza de Vaca wasn't a righteous conquistador. I mean, conquistador means conqueror. There's no righteousness in conquest, as conquest legitimizes all this bullshit. Cabeza de Vaca just wanted to dominate nicely. This certainly indicates to me a severe lack of wisdom. The kid and Cabeza de Vaca are knights on a quest, but quickly become disenchanted. They lose their innocence, but they gain no wisdom in the exchange. They remain trapped within material reality, bound to the fate of all men, which is to war, and to be made war upon. They were both inveterate fence-sitters, and as a registered centrist, this really hurts to say. I'm the local chairman of my centrist party chapter. I'm the deciding vote in all of our primaries. We haven't run anyone yet. I cannot decide. Should it be Ultra Hitler or this puppy? I don't know. They both have good points. Before that nice bit about like, ooh, you have a flawed place in the fabric of your heart, there is a more damning assessment of the kid's character. It is fence-sitting, a lack of wisdom. Like, these are the kid's character flaws. The priest has led you to this, boy. I know you would not hide. I know, too, that you've not the heart of a common assassin. I've passed before your gun sights twice this hour and will pass a third time. Why not show yourself? No assassin, called the judge. And no partisan either. Last day of fucking filming. I had to film this shit over, I think, 4 or 5 days. I have not been sleeping well. You gotta do what you gotta do. In The Sopranos, a line that has really stuck with me is,
Is your shoulder-ish?
Longtime viewers, I've taken you to some places over the past year or so, historically and personally. I appreciate your patience, and the point of these videos was to explore the human experience, up to and including my own. I think about that parasocial thing a lot, like, am I manipulating you, or am I connecting with you? Creative, or whatever the fuck it is that I am, Raycon merchant, I am but a thin shadow cast by the people that I truly admire. All great literature is about what a bummer it is to be alive, and what a relief it is to hear someone say it. That is what has guided my creative output this past year or so, you know, and also a desire to sublimate all this fucking nightmare shit. Also, I clearly like making you laugh. My next video is gonna be stupid. I'm gonna make my friend eat a spider, or I might talk about the genocide of the Karankawa. We'll see what happens. Geronimo is coming, but it's gonna be a big road trip. Shit takes time. What I respect so much about my favorite authors is their willingness to bleed all over the page. I made a video where I criticized most of the woke art or whatever the fuck for it lacked a sincerity, a vulnerability. And I thought I should myself, you know, practice as I'm preaching, right? And I've tried to bleed all over the page, the editing timeline. But you cannot talk about me like I'm a kid with fucking cancer anymore. I'm an ox. I'm morbid. I'll always be morbid. Do you have any idea how exhausting it is to read 1,000 comments asking me not to myself? I appreciate the sentiment, but you don't have control over this. You need to trust in my ox-like nature. Besides trying to be earnest and morbid, I also try to avoid politics. Contemporary politics. I often make the joke that I'm aggressively centrist, which is my shitposty way of acknowledging like I need to minimize my biases as much as possible. Some of you critique my work by saying, actually, DJ Peach Cobbler, history is inherently political. Thank you. I had not noticed. What I love about Blood Meridian is that it is a spiritual exploration of history, and that's sort of what I'm doing. George Orwell is doing somersaults in his fucking grave right now. It's just what I do. There's a big difference between discussing politics through the lens of history, which you unavoidably will, or being a political commentator. One involves reading and empathy, and the other makes a shitload of fucking money. I only really have 2 political beliefs, and the first is that we deserve better than the way we treat each other. The second stance is that the first one is useless and idealistic and doesn't matter. So I shouldn't bother. When I was a kid, I was asking way too early, is this all there is? I was disillusioned before I was supposed to be. I cannot recall my own innocence, and so I advocate for maybe maintaining your own. So this is the part of the video where I beg you, like as a person specifically, not to go to war. There will be no romance, only blood. You will be brainwashed into denying not only your own humanity, but your enemy's humanity. The fantasy is a trap, an illusion. It'll fucking get ya. Life itself will inevitably disillusion you. You'll go on a backpacking trip through Europe and you'll get stabbed, or you'll experience a tragic accident which scars you for life, or I don't know, you'll just get ground into dust under the weight of your shitty job the way God intended. It's gonna happen, getting disillusioned. Don't let war be that which disillusions you. I don't need to say any of that. I'm not happy that I'm ending what I think might be my best video ever with fucking Trump. Sweet Jesus, I don't want to talk about Donald Trump. Trump's great appeal, I thought, beyond his crassness, which is sometimes charming, right? Like, he eats Slim Jims for breakfast for sure. Man after my own heart. But he represented this disillusionment with the neoconservatives. The Great War on Terror and all its absurdity. I genuinely love that Dick Cheney died knowing he lost to this motherfucking guy. Like, that's great. But of course, he is fundamentally an intellectual coward. He does not read. And so Trump's real problem has come into sharp relief. The man has no divine spark, his soul is not intrepid, he's a slave to his material desires and possesses no connection whatsoever with anything outside of his own stomach. You know, presidents used to own slaves. I know, that wasn't very cool. But they did also not only read, they could read in multiple languages, including Latin. Knowing multiple languages is like a sign of weakness now, like we're fucked. Trump's real problem with the war on terror, you know, which he himself probably never examined, was that he wasn't in charge of it. I don't think the current wars he's trying to start are a distraction from his underage girls. I think both warmongering and underage girls are indicative of his general selfishness, his penchant for domination and humiliation. I don't need to disenchant you because you're not enchanted. No one wants to die in Iran, or Greenland. What the fuck are you talking about? There is no boy nor girl. Girls can be stupid and die in war too now. You get to be meat too now, ladies. Like, no one wants this shit. Even the talking heads who like the guy are breaking with him. It's a hatred of war itself. This cannot be due to Slaughterhouse-5, obviously. Like, most people haven't even read the first 4. War films have clearly gotten a lot darker, more cynical, less chivalrous as the decades have passed. Slaughterhouse-5 didn't start this. It was part of a broader disenchantment with war, which started around the time of Vietnam. There was a time in human history where women would publicly shame young men for refusing to die in a trench for no goddamn reason. But the machine cannot manufacture consent anymore. It's broken, or like, it's just, have we wised up? And importantly, can we do anything with that wisdom? Please, it would be very nice if we could do something with the wisdom that which we've actually genuinely gained. Even young men with no prospects can't be tricked into this shit anymore. Like, who was the last American war hero? Pat Tillman, who famously grew disenchanted with the war on terror before being killed by friendly fire? I'm not implying anything. The modern world, including America, holds a genuine, I think possibly unprecedented, disgust with war. We used to write poems, build great temples, dedicated explicitly and knowingly to gods of war. We'd sacrifice POWs atop some of them. But war is still happening, without even a fucking drop of that Don Quixote thing. We're already at the disillusionment, but we're stuck in it, and we don't know what to do with the wisdom we've gained. Our feelings on war seem as important as our feelings on glaciers and stone. Nothing has really changed. Blood Meridian is the anti-war book for our era. A book on alienation for the most alienated of times. I didn't watch Windigoon's video, but it seems that it helped bring this book into the mainstream. A mainstream which does need it. A mainstream which was primed for it. The point is this: we need to find a way to turn our disillusionment into positive change. And history teaches us that's not how history works. But there has been one development. The cult of the warrior is dead. War has outlived the warrior. It's easy to romanticize a cavalry charge or something cool like that, you know? You can't romanticize pressing a fucking button and blowing up a bridge.
Or fucking hospitals. I don't know why I mentioned the bridge. That felt like a stupid one to mention.
There's nothing romantic there. It's just sad. Our nation, all industrial nations, are built on the shallow graves of great warriors. For how much longer are we going to enjoy that uniquely American luxury given to us by our forebears, as horrible as they were, where war is a trip you take somewhere else, something you need to be tricked into rather than something you are unwillingly forced to be a part of, where war is taken to you by fucking idiots? You know, the thing about war being God, he's fickle. When I was a kid, I was asking at the age of fucking 7, is this all there is? And now I ask, I think, a better question: is this all we are? I know that I am a fucking ox, and with that comes stubbornness. I used to be impressed with my own stubbornness. I've grown to believe that knowing will not save us. It can save individuals, but not us. It might be a dead end, the knowing. The material circumstances compel us to eat and be eaten, and that's just what's always going to happen. And I try not to communicate this feeling, because I know that my hopelessness is useful to nefarious motherfuckers. I just sort of can't believe in any politics, because to believe in any politics, you need to believe in people. And I'm just trying to do that, man. My priorities are perfectly in order. Don't come to me for political opinions. Other than this, war is not worth it, man. I don't, in the odd chance that you need to be told that, but I don't think anyone needs to be told that anymore. I think we're sort of fucking over it. Not as a country, not as a culture, as a species, I think we're sort of over war. You have no idea how into this shit we once were.
Cheers, I'll drink to that, bro.
If McCarthy did believe in Gnostic theology, and wasn't just using it as a tool as a writer, then he completely, on a personal level, disagreed with the quote I shared at the beginning. He didn't believe knowing could save us, but he believed it could save you. That is the essence of Gnosticism, that knowing can save you. Of that, I'm still not too sure. Cormac McCarthy famously said that the ugly fact is that books are made of other books. And I've added one to the pile. Actually, I have a pile here. Where is it? Is it here? You know what? I'm not going to bother getting up to get it. Cabeza de Vaca, that book. I believe that it is a significant part of Blood Meridian, that reading also A Land So Strange by Andres Resendez, these will both help you understand and appreciate this powerful book on war, its inevitability, and its tragedy. I don't know if knowing can save us, but you should always know one thing. Something that inexplicably both Kurt Vonnegut and Cormac McCarthy, two authors who couldn't be more unalike, absolutely believed. No matter what has led us to these unacceptable circumstances, whether or not we can alter those circumstances, there is one truth that I will always hold dear. In spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. And frank. Thanks for watching.